Hello, patrons. It is Tuesday, April 10th, and this is your Cup of Jones. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It's a big Tuesday. We don't do small Tuesdays here at Easy Allies, but there's a lot of stuff going on today. I believe from starting at 12:30, wherever you are in the world, is currently 10 a.m. when I start Cup of Jones here, Southern California. At 12:30, we are shooting stuff, and we are not stopping until probably midnight. So we're doing some live stuff. We're doing some shoots. I got some details. Actually, we'll kick it off right away. We talked about it last week. Hey, everybody, let me know if stuff looks okay, sounds okay. We're big. We're live. Captain Caveman says he's going on a hike. Have a wonderful hike, Captain Caveman. Reaction shots and friend code will not be featured, will not be in their usual schedule for the month of April. We dipped just a hair below, a crazy, I think it was like $140 or something. And basically when we get that official amount is, unfortunately not on the first of the month, it's about a week later, a little under a week. But when we actually got the official amount, it was not quite 40K. And the rules are rules, so we will not be producing those this month. We will be shooting a tiny episode of Reaction Shots and Friend Code today, just mostly to alert people to the fact that the shows will not be produced as they regularly would, because we did not meet that goal. So not only are we going to be doing things this month to try to reinvigorate our growth here on Patreon, but these are things that we had been talking about doing since January, since we kicked off the beginning of the year. They're things that we knew. Well, we have our anniversary concert coming up at the end of March. Let's work on that, and then once that is done, we'll do this other project. And it just so happened that we were focused very much on our Patreon or on the anniversary concert, and our patrons are not feeling incentivized enough to get us to our goals and where we need to go. So we're gonna slap on some new goals. We're gonna change up some of the tiers. We're going to be announcing that stuff very quickly. We just need to finalize. It's tough because there's lots of conversation that happens on Slack. There's lots of stuff that happens behind the scenes, that happens online, that we just chat to each other and send messages and suggest stuff. Sometimes when it comes to Damiani setting up Easy Allies clips, which I'll get to in a second, or Bloodworth redesigning our thumbnails on YouTube, that stuff can be done from start to finish on Slack, even if not all 8 other allies weigh in on that. But there are some things that, even though we have discussed at great length on Slack, we want to make sure before we finalize stuff, we gather in person to finalize it, just in case somebody missed something, because that does happen when, tabletop needs to be scheduled, or when a video is going up, that not everybody gets a chance to realize that they missed chatting about it. Because you post a link, and then everybody talks about that link, and then that can kind of make the link go flying away. And sometimes you miss it, unless something is specifically addressed to you. So, need to finalize some stuff, and then we will be making announcements later in the week. And we will be hopefully doing some fun stuff before the month is out. That will hopefully turn things around. We are currently at 7 out of 9 sponsors for the Easy Allies podcast. That 9 is our cap, timing-wise, as far as how long we want podcast halftime to be in the middle of the podcast. So that right there is $1,000. That right there would have put us above 40K. And that's really on us to not to go out there and try to get some new sponsors and try to get some people involved in sponsoring Easy Allies. So I will not make guarantees that we will be there for the month of May. I feel very optimistic that we will be there for the month of May. I am not discouraged whatsoever in any way at all about the future of Easy Allies. If anything, I kind of like getting a little kick in the pants. I kind of like having a dip, just because, nobody likes having a dip, but at the same time, it's nice to go through the process of how Patreon works. It's nice to have an example of, we set up new tiers, we meet those, we produce those shows, and then when those tiers go away, those shows go away. That's how that works. So it is kind of nice to go through the motions to answer these questions for us about how we will handle shows being produced and then not produced anymore, how we'll handle other opportunities that we're not necessarily focusing on to incentivize people to come to Patreon, and possibly introducing the whole concept of Patreon to people. I would imagine there could potentially be a lot of people that only listen to the first 75% of the podcast, that cut out of every review right as the score is revealed, that don't necessarily get the verbiage a lot, that don't follow us on Twitter, don't follow us on Facebook, and have never been to patreon.com/easyallies, that just enjoy us from afar on YouTube. And so we want to communicate to that audience. We want to communicate on social media to everybody that now is a pretty good time to jump in, as you will I mean, now is a good time, but it's going to be an even better time soon. And I made a post on patreon.com/easyallies. We're all hopefully gathered right now that you can go and check out, not only with a message from me, that's basically me just rewording what I just said, but is also a great opportunity for you to reply and talk about general feedback about what you would like to see for the future of Easy Allies, what you would like to see us focus on. That is always the issue, like I said, the fact that we weren't doing a lot of soapboxing about Patreon, and that could potentially be one cause for that dip. But it's always the issue of, should we focus on one thing? And if we're focusing on that, what should we not focus on? Is there something that you don't like if we were not to be producing that, and then focus our resources elsewhere? What else would you like to see? I know there are also some concerns from people that they don't want to see us constantly chasing the dreams and goals of our patrons and not committing to one thing and changing everything up because we only want to do stuff that our patrons want to see. It is definitely a mix. We do some things because we enjoy doing it. We do other things because we know it's something that will do well on YouTube. We do other things because we know it's some stuff that our patrons want. So whether even though you might suggest something on that Patreon page, obviously there's no guarantee that we're going to be doing that, but that feedback, as we have talked about before, in the likes of surveys and whatnot, we definitely appreciate that feedback. A God of War review is coming from us later this week. I believe I've seen some people on social media talk about how Thursday is the day that all of you will find out the official scores from many outlets for God of War. I'm currently cutting that review. The review is written by Mr. Michael Huber, and it's great. I will say this, there's a line of dialogue from Kratos in the first 10 minutes of that game that immediately sold me on that game. And I can't wait to share that. I can't wait to say that line to Huber later today. Kratos is really great, that game. And I'm just slowly making my way through that review. So excited to bring that to you on Tuesday. And Michael Damiani made a post about E3. E3, it's like 2 months away. So obviously we're also getting ready for E3. And Mr. Michael Damiani put up a post similar to the post that I did about incentivizing people on Patreon that basically says, we have stuff that we want to do for E3. We have ideas, ways that we can improve our coverage, but we want to hear from you and hear what you want to see from our E3 coverage this year. And so we've been kind of obsessively chattering away on Slack about that and possible fun ideas. Of course, it wouldn't be Cal Bossman unless he suggested something that would cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. We're like, good idea, Kyle, but I don't know if we're gonna be doing that. Also coming from the love, the legend, Michael Damiani, is a brand new show from Easy Allies called Easy Allies Clips. Obviously, credit goes where credit is due, not only to Michael Damiani, but to Some Game News, the YouTube channel that has been producing the Best of Easy Allies series. And what was great about Some Game News is they produced the Best of Easy Allies across everything that we did. So that was group streams, regular solo streams, our different shows. Easy Allies Clips will be specifically our streams on Twitch. And there was always kind of a struggle between our two channels, Easy Allies and Easy Allies Plays on YouTube. Easy Allies being our main flagship channel, obviously where we push most people to increase that subscriber amount, which has crossed 150,000 if you didn't notice. And we have Easy Allies Plays, which is where all of our streams go after we stream them on Twitch. And so those are organized there. So if you want to catch up on shows, Bruce vs. Batman, which is now wrapped up its second season because I finished the last episode of Season 2 of Telltale's Batman game called The Enemy Within, specifically for Season 2. But even if you want to go back and watch, say, Red Dead Revisited or Bosman v. Wozniak or any of our streams, you could go there, but it's a lot of stuff, many hours that I understand most, if not all, of our audience does not have time to check out. And so we wanted to do something highlights-esque for a while, something that would showcase that. Obviously, one opportunity to do that would be to pay an editor or to bring in somebody to work on that. But an easy way for us to do that internally is for you to go to twitch.tv/easyallies. And while we are streaming or after the fact, clip out some of your favorite moments from our many streams, and then we will gather those clips and then produce that show. You can go and check out the first episode. I had a lot of notes on the first episode. Other allies had notes. That will be a show that will be evolving as time goes on, and I'm sure we will get better at. and produce at a greater efficient speed. But I really like the idea because it is collaborative. It is something that these are not clips that were chosen by us. These are clips that were chosen by our community. You will be credited for the clip based on whatever your profile is on Twitch in the video, and so. I love it. I love it for many, many reasons. I think selfishly, one of the reasons why I love Easy Allies clips is I don't get to watch a lot of this stuff. I really, from the first episode, I think one of my favorite moments was Ben defeating that like vampire, and it looked like everybody on his team was dead, and Suikoden, and he finally took out this boss. I was very happy about that, and so it's really nice to absorb these moments because even being as close to Easy Allies as I am, I miss out on a lot of the great stuff that we produce because we produce just too much good stuff, and so it's nice to go pick that up. And Michael Damiani was pretty much took the burden of that entire project on by himself, and we definitely appreciate him working on that. So yeah, Easy Allies clips, go check it out. God of War Thursday, check it out. Tonight is a fascinating group stream. Tonight is our intramural tournament for the month of April, and we will be streaming Far Cry 5 for a very special episode of Don's Design Lab. I don't know if Don is going to be the judge tonight. We tend to call it Don's Design Lab and then might bring in other judges. Maybe I'll be the judge. I don't know. That seems only fair because Mr. Ian Hank and myself have spent a lot of time in Far Cry 5. I built one successful map you can go check out called Squirrel Town. It is a assault map if you want to filter and try to look for it. I don't believe you can search by name, unfortunately, for the maps on Far Cry. I need to look up how to tell people go get it. But I recreated the map of the opening of Resident Evil 2 and got Mr. Michael Huber to play it last week. That was last week, right? Wow, it seems like a long time ago. So it seems kind of unfair that Ian and I are jumping into Don's Design Lab, having much more experience with the level editor in Far Cry 5 than I believe the other allies have. I can't speak for anybody. Maybe Blood will jump in and be like, well, actually, this weekend I spent a ton of time. So it'll be interesting to see if Ian and I are allowed on the same team, because that definitely does not seem fair. But check that out tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific time on twitch.tv/EasyAllies if you would like to see who will win the April intramural tournament. I've won the intramural tournament once. Last month I won it with Mr. Brad Ellis. We co-opted that. But then for the prizes to determine who would take the prize home, I lost that match. So winning the intramural tournament only, of course, to lose to the great Ultima Brad. Or just Brad. Brad doesn't like it when those personas are mixed. But we'll see. We get Don's Design Lab tonight. We'll see if one of us can take it home. One of us. Me, baby. I guess it's team-based, so it doesn't count. But I only win when there's teams. Feedback. Let's do it. Brad's fully morphed into Don. Rick Ho just ordered Labo. Labos? Multiple? Is it like Amiibo, where it's just Labo all the time? Like Lego? Or is it, is Labos a word? I don't know. Alexander Zirianov, who edits Blood's script when he writes a review? So if you're not aware, Daniel Bloodworth is our managing director here at Easy Allies, but is also what you would call a reviews editor at other outlets. So he is not the last line of defense, but the first person that you would send a script to. So when Brad or myself or Damiani or Ben or Huber finishes a script, we send it to Blood. Blood makes it better and then sends it back. But of course, Blood also reviews games. So who reviews that when Blood reviews games? Nobody. He reviews it himself. But at the same time, I am kind of the last line of defense because I have to read the script out loud. And I think that is a very important process when trying to understand. I know there was an edit recently where somebody put the game title like 8 times in the first paragraph. And then I got notes later where they were like, yeah, I didn't really know how ridiculous that sounded for you to read the entire game title like 8 times in a row until I actually heard you read it. And so reading that out loud, sometimes people are poets and they don't know it. Like sometimes I'll read something and I'm like, oh, that's a rhyme. That sounds kind of dumb. Like I know it. If you were to read that in your mind, you might be like, no, that rhymes, and then move on. But when you hear a human being say it out loud, it's sticks out a little bit more. So I do get a chance to come in and to take a peek. So if anything is grammatically odd or if anything sticks out, it's not just Blood's mind straight to your ears. A couple other people do get to step in, but not with the expertise that Blood brings to the review. But then again, because he spends so much time editing other people's scripts, his scripts turn out usually pretty good. So not something I'm worried about. Diamond Crusader, what do you think about these quotes in regard to the current social climate? So we got a bunch of quotes from people, kicking it off with one of my favorite human beings in the history of human beings, Mr. Benjamin Franklin. If all printers were determined not to print anything till they were sure it would offend nobody, there would be little left to print. He misspelled the word too. If all printers were determined not to print anything till they were sure it would offend nobody, there would be little left to print. I agree. Benjamin Franklin's a very smart man. I don't think that necessarily says that people shouldn't be offended by anything. It just says that if something is printed, it will most likely offend someone, which I think is a true statement. There's no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written, that is all. Mr. Oscar Wilde, who is known to say, not only say scandalous things, but write scandalous things and be a scandalous human being. Oscar Wilde was fascinating. There's no such thing as a moral or immoral book. Books are well written or badly written, that is all. Yeah, I think moral. I will agree that I don't think you can stamp something as moral or immoral. I think that is obviously in the eyes of the beholder. Obviously, some things, most of the commandments in general, are good life lessons, a good guide to follow. Yeah, I think well written or badly written is probably more important than the other, because that will affect how well that morality is perceived by the viewer, and obviously how many people want to absorb that information. If we don't believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. Noam Chomsky. Sure, believe in it? Yeah. You can be frustrated by freedom of speech. You can, deep down in your gut, want to take freedom of speech from people, but believing in freedom of expression, sure, I will. Mr. Chomsky, I'll buy into that one. What is freedom of expression without the freedom to offend? It ceases to exist. Do you see a trend here from Mr. Diamond Crusader? Have you noticed the sharpness? What is freedom of expression without the freedom to offend? It ceases to exist, Sir Ahmed Salman Rushdie. What is freedom of expression without the freedom to offend? It ceases to exist. Yes, you know what I would love? I mean, yeah, I'm a fan of all of these. I would love to know what caused it. I would love to know the date, and I would love to crack open like recent newspapers, go back in time, because most of these people are not around anymore. I think all of these people. I'm not sure who Tom Smothers is. Is that one of the Smothers brothers? Who's coming up next? Tom Smothers. Who's Tom Smothers? Maybe Jack can tell me. But yes, obviously, yes. People should be able to say what they want to say, and then experience potential backlash, because that is the current social climate. Someone's not going to like what you say, and they're going to let you know about it. The only valid censorship... Oh, this is from Tom Smothers. The only valid censorship of ideas is the right of people not to listen. Of course. The dirtiest book of all is the expurgated book. Expurgated meaning you can't read that. Taken away. And somebody writes something and you cross it out. Redacted. The dirtiest book of all is the expurgated book from Walt Whitman. Sure, Walt, I could give you a dirtier book than possibly an expurgated book. Maybe that one's a little flowery. I don't know if I sign up for that one particularly, but Walt Whitman is very smart. I tell you, if I could pick any one of these people, Oscar Wilde would probably have a field day in the current climate. Is Salman Rushdie still alive? I do not know. See if anybody knows. All these questions about freedom of speech. Oh, they're definitely bait questions. They're that's what Diamond Crusader did every time. Oh, Cup of Jones time for Diamond Crusader. But is Jones preparing to offend a bunch of people? Yeah. What's Cup of Jones? Get ready. Nobody knows who. That's bait. Nobody knows who Tom Smothers is. We'll look him up. Tom Smothers, everybody, real time. Check it. My guess is the from the Smothers Brothers, but I don't know. Tom Smothers' net worth is the second one coming in. So Tom Smothers appears to be rich. Yeah. Tom Boylan Smothers the third is an American comedian, composer, and musician, best known as half of the musical comedy duo The Smothers Brothers, alongside his younger brother Dick. Nice. I got it. Tom Smothers, nice. I actually saw the Smothers Brothers perform one time. They were extremely funny. Bearded Scotsman 86. Someone made a request this week to advertise Patreon at the start of the video meaning the Easy Allies podcast. In my opinion, this is a bad idea. If it is my first time in a video by someone and they are pushing likes, subscribes, or Patreon at me, then I'm put off. I haven't watched it yet. I have no idea if it's good, why I would like or give money. why would like it or give money? If it happens in all their videos, then I'll stop watching their content after seeing them begging too many times. The begging is definitely something that I'm averse to. It is something that I fear, definitely. Just that vibe where they're like, oh, again. We definitely try to be jovial, be lighthearted whenever we do the due diligence, do our fiduciary duty of telling all of everyone in our audience how this works. The fact that we are supported here on Patreon, the fact that if we are to grow, we need to grow either just by leaps and bounds on social media or YouTube, or the quicker, easier way, at least for us, to grow here on Patreon. So I'm right with you, Bearded Scotsman, aka Corn Fan, but yeah, it is a fine line. I think it may. We have weighed so many options in light of us not meeting 40K this month. We've talked about many suggestions people have made in the past, many things that we're not doing because some things we're not doing because we don't have time. Some things we're doing because our resources are pointed elsewhere at the moment. But some things we do just because they feel kind of icky. And that is definitely Kyle Bossman's opinion, because it is his show, the Easy Allies podcast. And so I did throw that to him when we were in the process of. I was setting up the laptop in the booth to record Box Peak VO, and I was like, "Hey, Kyle, Patreon pitch at the beginning of the podcast." He was not a fan. So, but Bearded Scotsman also does not like it. Jesse P. My favorite content from Easy Allies is the long-form content, and all this talk about perhaps moving away from it has me a little worried. Are you able to confirm that you and the Allies will still be committed to creating long-form content? Heck yeah. We're not. Yeah. We're not canceling anything. I think if anything's going away, it might be some tiers that are just not working out, but those tiers aren't necessarily involved with this show's going away. Nothing's going away. We're adding a bunch of new fun stuff. And by long-form content, I'm guessing you mean retrospectives? I'm trying to think of other like long-form stuff that we do. Retrospectives and Game Sleuth, I'm guessing, would be our most like scripted long-form content stuff. Obviously, our streams are pretty long, but I'm assuming you mean scripted. As that is some of your favorite stuff, that's our favorite stuff to do as well. So, if anything, we want to double down on it. Ulf himself, has you guys thought about increasing the benefits of the lower pledge tiers as an incentive to get new patrons? The average of each Easy A patrons pledge is fairly high, which means if some drop off for whatever reason, your monthly income can swing a fair amount. What idea for incentives I've thought about is recording a bonus love and respect question each week and make it exclusive to patrons. It probably wouldn't be that much more work since you could record it together with the podcast. It might sound weird coming from a consumer of your content, but I think you give too much away for free. Exclusives are enticing to a lot of people. That is definitely something that we have thought of. That is definitely a question that, a comment that we were seeing, as I mentioned before. I made a post on Patreon that you can go check out where we talk about being a 39K Patreon this month instead of a 40K Patreon. And a lot of people were saying, do more exclusive stuff. There was and continues to be backlash against Cup of Jones because it is exclusive. Some people don't want anything exclusive. They want everything for everybody for multiple reasons. If they cannot afford or have no interest in supporting us on Patreon, they want to get all the stuff. And some people have seen some good episodes that I've done here on Cup of Jones, some stuff that they like, and they want the world to see it as well. And so they get frustrated that their friends can't enjoy the content that they do because they are not patrons. But at the same time, we got a lot of people showing up that are saying you should exclusives. So yeah, we've definitely heard you. Brandon K. Gann, per the discussion regarding the dip in money and patrons, I have only a simple question about something I'm surprised you didn't touch on. What, in your estimation, is the cause for this? I definitely touched on it, and I touched on it. Come on, Brandon. From one Brandon to another. We focused on other stuff. We were focused on our concert, and we expected a bigger bump. We expected more exposure to come from that concert. It appears that concert mostly satisfies our audience, and is not something. I got to admit, I was a little salty that just a little bit we put up our separate clips, and I put our clip of I get up on stage and I sing and dance. And it doesn't happen that often. I don't see many other people that have the job that we do that put on a tuxedo and go on stage and sing and dance. So I was hoping some people on social media might be like, hey, nice show. And not a lot of that. So the concert is mostly for our audience. It's mostly to celebrate what we do and to do something that's a little unconventional. But it does not seem to be hot fire when it comes to being enjoyed by the rest of the video game industry. They don't really seem to care. So maybe we will. That's not to say that we're not going to put as much work into the concert next year, because it is so much fun to produce. But maybe we will not focus so much, so that in the month following. So we were not expecting an outreach. We're not expecting a boost in patron numbers. We're not expecting that stuff following the concert. And so then we will double down or put a lot of support behind the Patreon as well when it comes to incentivizing people. I think I definitely saw a lot of sentiment from people that were frustrated, that were not a lot of Patreon tiers that were announced at the anniversary. They expected that. They're like, I thought a new show would be announced, even though we did produce the Busted Trifecta, and you will be getting more episodes of that. We did show off Boxpeak for the first time, and obviously that is coming. So we thought that would incentivize people to support us on Patreon. Did not happen. And so it's just a lesson that, again, it is a fun show and is something that people enjoy, but those people tend to be people that already support us, and it's not necessarily something that will bring in new people coming in. So there were Patreon tiers. Oh, tiers, not tears. Tiers. People listening were like, what? Did Easy Sayer do something that caused such a drop? I'm sure we said something. This feels out of the blue because, as I recall, there wasn't anything of real financial consequence that would move the needle at all, much less in the opposite direction. I'm sure the upcoming announcements will help entice new or returning patrons, but with finances, especially the loss of them, is still concerning, however slight, relatively speaking. Yeah, the other thing, too, to keep in mind is if, we dropped... we were less than $200 away from hitting that goal. If we were at 41,000 and lost that 200 or lost that $1,000 because we don't have nine sponsors of the Easy Allies podcast as we typically do, we wouldn't be having this conversation because we would be above that goal, and those shows would still be produced. So it is not just a matter of the size of the drop, but specifically where we were when that drop happened. So it's a good place to be. We didn't drop to 30 and we're all in panic mode. It's just a good time to reevaluate. Okay, when we're working on in the future, let's make sure first and foremost we address incentivizing people on Patreon. Daniel Garza Andrade, when did you learn to look into the camera, meaning the lens? Like talking to people. Was it odd at the beginning? What advice would you give to people to improve talking into the camera? I actually brought this up with some friends the other day, and I'm glad that I can share this with you. I had worked on camera before. I'd done lots of stuff on camera, but there's a huge difference between doing something with a group of people on camera. Like when we do the podcast, every now and then we'll look up at the camera and address people, but when you're with a bunch of people, the camera's it feels like just another person. So if you're talking with somebody, it's very easy to just address the camera and then, go back to this person. But when you're by yourself, when it's just you and this weird device, and you're just talking directly into the camera, it can be extremely strange. And I first confronted this at Game Trailers when I produced a show called Trailer Academy, where I used to sit down, analyze a trailer, and then play the game that trailer was for, and then go through the game and figure out what changed from the trailer, yada, yada, yada. You all probably are aware of the show. If not, you can throw that in on YouTube, Trailer Academy, go check out old episodes. But in the beginning, since I didn't use a teleprompter, I would have a 3, 4, 5 sentence opening describing kind of the thesis for the episode and what I wanted to discuss when talking about the game. And I would memorize that to the best of my ability. And when I was rehearsing that in my office, what I would do is I would take a Post-it note and I would draw a little tiny circle on the Post-it note, and then I would put that up on the wall, and then I would do the speech to the Post-it note. And the thing that helped with was not only, obviously, the recitation? Sure. Of that dialogue, so I would, get those thoughts in my head and hopefully memorize that piece. But it also helps not only the presence, because there's a depth to a camera that can be kind of intimidating. There's this kind of this spiral that never ends that goes all the way to this little tiny point. But at the same time, it can be really weird to, especially for myself who did a lot of theater, you're used to kind of looking at everybody. And when you do public speaking, it's good to address each corner of the room as much as you can and spread your perspective. With the camera, it's the absolute opposite. You are just, completely focused on a pinpoint. And so it's good. I mean, you don't have to do a Post-it, but it's good to find a point that you want to focus on and then read the thing that you have to read directly to that point. And then it helps you do that weird thing, because that is extremely strange. Even when you're talking to a person, your perspective is a little bit wider. You're kind of taking in their whole face, both eyes. And but a camera is not a person. A camera is a very crazy, soulless thing. It's weird to kind of imagine all of you, this, all of these main supporters. We have 150,000 people that follow us on YouTube. We have, several thousands of people that follow us on Twitch and social media and the like. And we have 6,000 wonderful patrons here on patreon.com/easyallies. Of those 6,000 wonderful patrons, there is specifically the Cup of Jones crowd, people that show up week to week. I always appreciate, I believe it was Noah today. I always like to see some people that jump up in chat who are like, I've never seen this live. So there are definitely some people that make the time to come and tune in. And for you people that either listen to the audio version after the fact, watch the video on patreon.com after the fact, or watch it live, you are my peoples. And it's crazy that you're all just kind of wrapped up in this little tiny thing, like you're all in there. There's sometimes when like I'll be right in the middle of a show, usually Cup of Jones, where I'll just be like, we're still live, right? Like this is still happening, right? Like I'll just like look up at chat, like chat's still going, and right, okay, because it can feel a little strange. It can feel like I'm rehearsing for like a one-man show, and I'm just in my audience, or in my head. Maybe I'm imagining this whole thing. I don't know. Maybe this is all fake accounts, and everyone's just humoring me. You never know. That's not true, because I met a lot of you in person, and you're all lovely. Steve S., any thoughts about an East Coast event for us Easy A fans? I'd love to go to a concert and support, but I can't fly out to California. Thoughts, definite thoughts, passionate thoughts, emotional thoughts. I went to school in Boston, and PAX East is just wrapped up, and I want PAX East in my life so bad. I have done what I rarely do and very much regret, which is made a promise that I was going to be at PAX East this year, or it might have even been last year. I've made promises in the past that I would go to PAX East. It's a bad idea, because we definitely want to have more than a presence at a PAX other than just showing up and being like, hey, and playing games, because we get lots of opportunities to play games a lot of times. If we miss something that's introduced at PAX, chances are a preview event or another opportunity will be coming up soon. Just completed my Comic-Con registration, which is coming up in July. So if any of you are going down to Comic-Con in San Diego, I will see you there. But I sympathize greatly with a lot of people on the East Coast. It's frustrating to see really great groups like Kind of Funny, What's Good Games, make PAX East a point and get out there. And we were very fortunate to have the lovely Daniel Bloodworth head up to GDC and check that out when none of the other allies had the time, or we're going to sign up to go check out that show, because there's a lot going on. But yeah, I want that to happen so bad. That is something I really want to do, and one of these days I will most likely buckle. Again, I'm not going to make promises, but and head out there. So even if it's just me, I hope you will join me for an East Coast meetup. I'm curious where you are on the East Coast. Anthony Moss, considering you went to university for film, did you ever watch any foreign films that you really enjoyed? If so, any that you'd recommend? Oh dear. The Red Balloon is a classic. Is that a short or is that a feature? I think that's a short. The kids like chasing the red balloon. Oh man, you'd think. I did go to film school, and you'd think I would be able to recite at least one foreign film that I enjoyed. The thing is, when I think about a lot of foreign films, I have like images in my head. I have a style in my head. There's an Italian film that is on the top of my head specifically that I absolutely cannot think of. And I should have prepped for this question, and I'm embarrassing myself as a film major right now, that I cannot think of any one thing. I'm curious to see Seven Samurai, obviously. Not Seven Samurai, but Seven Samurai is great, but what is it? The Great Kurosawa, where everybody's telling different stories and they're all different. Come on! What is that movie called? Where you get everyone's perspective, and they're like, Old Boy. I haven't seen Old Boy. City of Lost Children is great. I didn't watch that in film school. City of Lost Children is fantastic. 8.5 is good. Rashomon. Rashomon is really great. I love Rashomon. And who is like the seminal Italian director from the Black and White? Just say Ghibli. Yeah, obviously Ghibli. But that's the problem. Is like everybody. All the, Old Boy, Life is Beautiful, like, all of these films, that Hidden Fortress, Mongol, like, all of these films I have seen, but I didn't watch in college. Fellini, yeah, Fellini. But there's one Fellini film. Yeah, sorry. Anime is foreign too. I did not watch a lot of anime in college. But yeah, I'll get more suggestions from chat, and hopefully redeem myself a little bit as a film major. One thing that was fascinating about film is there was just a lot of movies that you will never get a chance to really sit down and watch. Like Citizen Kane, we all know is excellent and very forward thinking and revolutionary at the time. But you know, there's not many people who are just gonna like, let's watch Citizen Kane, let's do it. You know, let's pop in Citizen Kane right now instead of just whatever's on HBO or Netflix. Let's do it. Birth of a Nation, let's do it. No, nobody's just watch Birth of a Nation. The original Birth of a Nation, the 5-hour epic. La Dolce Vita is not the film. After the Rain, okay. But there were a lot of movies that I had never taken the time to go see that I definitely enjoyed. I took a class on horror. That was a really great. Saw the Hills Have Eyes and The People Under the Stairs and The Last House on the Left and a lot of movies I hadn't seen. So yeah, sorry that I can. The horror genre. Boom! I got a bunch of titles ready to go. Foreign films, that's terrible. That's terrible. I mean, Bad Jones. Andrew Chalmers, tiers seem a little backwards. Taking away shows only seems like it would make things drop even more. Yeah, it's a fascinating concept. You know, it's 12 Angry Men, sure. Bicycle Thief. Might have been Bicycle Thief. That rings a bell, definitely. Casablanca is also pretty good. The Killer's good. Next year, instead of a concert, we just screen films everyone talks about but never watches. Excellent suggestion, Mr. Daniel Bloodworth. There is that concern, you know, so we drop below a specific tier. Those shows go away. Obviously, that's... you could potentially have two different reactions. People could say, what? They dropped below? Okay, well, I was thinking about upping my Patreon pledge or making a point to tell other people about Easy Allies or leaving a couple comments possibly on a YouTube video and telling people, hey, I like this channel. I wish you would support it. But at the same time, some people could be like, oh, reaction shots and friend code are going away. Well, it's over. Flip the table. I'm out. Yeah, it's does a dip incentivize people to donate more? It certainly has for us, but to work harder to make that happen. But I could see that going both ways. So I will not make any specific predictions on the emotional state of any individual patron following the news that a couple of our shows are going away for a month. But again, like I said before, it's nice to take a vacation, and hopefully Ian and Damiani use their time well. Damiani already has, because he's made a new show. Matt B, has there been a community you've interacted with Has there been a community you've interacted with, passively or actively, that has made your life markedly better? A community. I've always really liked, I've talked about them before, but I'll definitely give a shout out to the G1s from Screw Attack. That has, from Game Attack. Well, I guess they Screw Attack, but they are, actually, I don't know. What are they called? I guess the Game Attack doesn't call them G1s. I guess G1s are still on the Screw Attack banner. Screw Attack's still going strong, but Sean and Craig have started their own thing with Game Attack. But I was always super jealous of them back in the day, meaning back in the Game Trailers days when Screw Attack was producing content countdowns and game vaults for Game Trailers and for themselves, but they will also be featured on Game Trailers. And I was always jealous. I always admired the attention that they gave to their community, and it was something that we didn't do, and I think was one of the reasons why the interest in Game Trailers dipped over the years, because we did not have that close of a connection to our community. They did not feel empowered. They didn't feel they were a part of the conversation or a part of the growth of the channel. And so I will always have a soft spot for those G1s because of the way they brought everybody in. I think they did a really good job. It's kind of one of the reasons why I was so excited with the name Easy Allies, because I was like, yay, our community is going to be allies. That's great. Like, I like that they have a name, have an identity. It always tickles me whenever I jump into Twitch chat or when I throw this chat up on the TV and the people say, good morning, allies. It's like, yay, we're all allies. We're all a family. We're all looking out for each other. So yeah, they have definitely made my life markedly better. Star Wars. Star Wars is a strange kinship that I have definitely felt over the years. It was really interesting being a Star Wars fan in the 90s. I'm actually curious, like, when... Because I think they kept selling toys until, like, 86 5 or 6 or something, and like they were making comic books, and they were still pumping some stuff out after Return of the Jedi. And then we got like Star Tours in the 80s, I think, right? Star Tours came out in the 80s. And that was exciting. But there was this gray area. And I think the special edition started around 95, I think. And so there was this period, this decade between the mid-80s and the mid-90s when Star Wars was just not doing anything. And so it was fascinating to meet Star Wars fans in that era and to meet friends. You know, it was fun to go into high school and find such a strong bond between my close friends over this silly thing called Star Wars that we enjoyed. Of course, is Star Wars ever going to have a lull like that ever again? I don't know. Mr. Mags, is Amanda officially considered one of the allies? Not officially. I love seeing her on streams in Fiasco and would love to see her on podcasts and other stuff you guys do, if she wants to, of course. One thing that Amanda and I have talked about, I don't know if that's going to be associated with the tier, so I'm not going to make any promises right now, but she would love to be more involved in streams and stuff like that. I don't know if you were aware of this, but my wife started a podcast called The Complimentary Podcast. You can follow them at CompPod on Twitter, CompPod. It is my favorite thing about the podcast is it's short. It's usually about 20, 25 minutes long. And it's her and her friend Kelly Lohman, and they talk about each other, what they like about each other. They compliment each other. They talk about things that complement each other well, peanut butter and jelly and the like. And then they have a guest on. They compliment the guest. And it's just a very cheery podcast. And they just wrapped up their first season, so you can go and check out. I think they did about 7 or 8 episodes from the first season. But I think you would officially be one of the allies if you're getting a paycheck. And Amanda is not paid for her involvement in Easy Allies. She helps out with the business. She helps out with, obviously my emotional state. And she helps out. I mean, this is her house as well, so she helps the upkeep of the property. And she has been involved in many ways on streams and group streams and streams with myself. And there are definitely some games coming up. The Swords of Ditto, I think, would make a dynamite Spouse Quest stream. Yeah, I mean, Sophie doesn't get a paycheck, but Sophie, we would also consider an ally. We have some sort of, we have extended allies. We definitely had Mr. Sean German Efficiency Clinton helped out with our concert and helps out with stuff technically. When we first started Easy Allies, he donated us a laptop to help with before we picked up our own equipment, and so we definitely. He's definitely got our back. So there are people that, I'm an ally, you are an ally, we are allies. But when you put out the term officially considered, it is still just the 9 of us. Youngstar, I think you've given it a good shot with Patreon. Oof. But do you really believe 2 years in and going forward that the figures show anything other than what you're achieving now, plus minus a couple of K? Youngstar, this comment eludes my brain. I don't know specifically what were you referencing. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's our business issue right now, is me not understanding what you're talking about. I will read it again. I think you've given it a good shot with Patreon, but do you really believe 2 years in and going forward that the figures show anything other than what you're achieving now, plus minus a couple of K? I think they all, yeah. That's just, it's like, don't you think Patreon just shows how much money you're making? Like, yeah, it does. I don't know. Meaning that we're never going to grow? There's kind of a negative tinge to that, So I don't know if that was like a shot fired or what, but I'm a little confused. Yeah, we are. I've seen a lot of people on Patreon be like, they're pretty much at the same place that they were a year ago, and like that's true. We've fought hard to be there. We've fought hard to maintain this Patreon. Growth can happen, growth will happen, but it takes a lot of work to do that. And sometimes when we're working on something and we still maintain, I see that as a success because we have maintained relatively the same level as we were before. And that can be difficult with a lot of people jumping into the Patreon and leaving through absolutely no fault of our own, just deciding that financially this doesn't work out for me, and or you guys all seem to be doing fine. You don't necessarily need my money. So there's many, many reasons people have given over the years for not supporting us on Patreon. So yeah, I guess where I'm at with this question is I agree with you, but I'm not like shocked or rocked by that, and I don't know if that was your intent. Let's see if I can do this. First, I just wanted to say my last name is pronounced Reef. Andrew Reef. I'm guessing. R-E-I-F. He specifically cites a German descent. So that would be Reif? Andrew Reif. Which is awesome, because I believe Andrew is also a podcast sponsor, so I want to get that name right. And second, small spoilers for Far Cry 5. Small spoilers. I'll wave my hands when we're done. Is there a mission? There's a mission where the game outright makes fun of the creator of Far Cry Blood Dragon to the point of immersion breaking. What did you think of this mission? Personally, I found the whole thing petty and a cheap shot at someone who many think made the best Far Cry to date. I'm familiar with that mission. I didn't realize that was a shot at the director. I thought that was just a shot at Hollywood. So I don't know. Like I didn't get the vibe that was making fun of a game director. That to me mostly seemed like Hollywood being silly, and I think, yeah, if it specifically talked about games, I think that would be a much more loaded critique or parody. If they had renamed Blood Dragon, if they had called it something else and changed the posters, but like you can see posters around that area where you get that quest that say Blood Dragon. So they are promoting that. Obviously they want to, because it is a Far Cry game and they want people to go buy it. But yeah, I didn't get any kind of negative vibe from that, but that is fascinating that you bring that up. And if that is specifically if it's making fun of the director of Far Cry Blood Dragon, I've missed this story about Blood Dragon. I did not know there was a director that's possibly no longer associated with Far Cry. I did not know that there was any kind of bad blood between Ubisoft and the person who directed this game. I don't know if the likeness was similar. That would be a very cheap shot if they made the character in the game that you converse with similar to the actual person who directed Far Cry. So while the mission cracked me up, it's funny because you help a director shoot a film, and it is a funny commentary on the egos of directors and the egos of really just anybody with artistic goals that can be affected or stunted by things like money and misuse of labor. Yeah, if it was done if it was done to knock somebody down or to make fun of somebody, that ain't cool. But I didn't know that. I'm curious to look up more on that. Kenneth Childs, the merchandise link at the top of Easy Allies website only goes to your Spreadshirt page. I think you should add a link to your Fangamer page as well. Yeah, there's maybe ways we can do that. Maybe we can have like a drop-down menu up there that goes there as well. Or maybe that goes to a completely separate page that on that page has links and lets you know where you can go pick up other things. But you are absolutely right. That is important enough to be a takeaway. Now we'll write that right down. Merchandise links to Fangamer. All right. I'm going to take this moment. Pause for for smoothie identification. A lot of you are tweeting out pictures of you getting your brand new Easy Allies merch. And y'all look real good, if it's okay for me to say. Warm feelings. In the alternate reality where Easy A actually stagnated and never reached 50K, what would the company look like? Would it remain in your garage indefinitely with minor incremental improvements to lighting, production, and sound, etc.? Would shows like Reaction Shots, Friend Code, and Trailer Jones just never be produced? It depends, because that's up to, I can't say that because that's up to Damiani and Ian. These shows were introduced to incentivize people to up their pledge on Patreon. They are produced because they are things they are very passionate about. Ian is very passionate about film. Damiani is very passionate about Nintendo. I'm very passionate about trailers. So that is something that we want to do, but obviously a card that we want to hold in case we need I've said incentivize like 500 times in this episode, to encourage people to give us money. And so I can't say specifically in that regard whether we would still do that, because Ian might decide one day, I don't want to make this a tier. I just want to do the show anyway. And, we would all potentially vote on that. But if Ian was very passionate about that, then we would probably most likely let him do the show if he wants to do the show. We just, it's obviously want to put that on a level where it makes people want to up the money thing. Siri, what's look up thesaurus under incentivize. Would it remain in my garage indefinitely? Probably not. I think if we were at this thing for like 2 more years and we still hadn't hit that 50K goal, I think we would definitely want to reevaluate the future of EZA as far as kind of what we wanted to turn that into, in either make an announcement officially that we were welcome to the garage, baby, because it's garage forever, or if we would want to maybe strip Easy Allies down and focus more on just doing journalism for the games industry, and then finding a space that we could do that we could then afford. But right now, if we were going to do that, all of us would take a pretty substantial hit to our salary, and that would be dangerous. But I'm okay with it remaining in my garage indefinitely. I just checked in with some friends of mine from high school, and we all talked about jobs, and one person said, I went to their house, and they worked right next to the building where they worked. She's like, wow, my commute is the shortest of anybody. And I was like, haha, my commute is shorter. So I do enjoy that. I do enjoy being here. There are, of course, many pluses and minuses towards operating something like this out of your home. But minor incremental improvements to lighting, production, and sound, etc., will happen regardless of whether we stagnate or drop or grow or whatever, as hopefully you will see very soon. Possibly later, as I smack the camera. Hopefully soon you will see incremental improvements to lighting, production, and sound. Jordan Elder, I think it would be cool if you reviewed Save the World and Huber reviewed Battle Royale from Fortnite, but they were in the same video somehow. Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the concept of the dual review. We've definitely had some people that were involved in the review process. Mr. Brad Ellis was obviously very intimately involved in the review of A Way Out. He played the entire thing with Huber, and I'm sure affected Huber's opinions and thoughts of that game. There are also things like Sea of Thieves that cannot be played alone, that we need co-op games like Destiny. That we definitely need more people involved. But when it comes time to actually publish the video, there is one person specifically that reviews that game, that puts their name on the video, that says, the buck stops here. If you this score was determined by me, finalized by me, the script was written by me. I have received help with scripts in the past, but so yeah, I don't know if we'll ever be ready for an official co-op review. But if we, whenever we do review Fortnite, which apparently is going to be sometime in 2018, somebody, I think it was Ebo Show, directed me toward, possibly was in the last week's Cup of Jones comments, I believe, directed me toward a frequently asked questions page on Fortnite's website, where they said that Save the World will be going free to play in 2018. So I would assume that means it's coming out of early access, but we'll see. Keon Jerome, can you sell me on SSX Tricky? I'm someone who enjoyed the most recent SSX on PS3, so did I, but when it comes to the series, I mainly just keep hearing about Tricky. I know you know next to nothing about my taste in games, but I'm interested in why you think Tricky, or if I'm wrong, a different SSX game, is the best one. I do not think Tricky is the best one. I think SSX 3 is the best one that you can play on PlayStation 2 or Xbox. Did SSX 3 come out on GameCube? I don't believe it did. Why everyone talks about Tricky is SSX came along and was more of a kind of a fun, circusy, playful look at an extreme sports game. That kind of said, threw realism away. And even though obviously there are things you can do in Tony Hawk games that you could not do in real life, the environments in Tony Hawk games are, obviously there's not icons floating around skate parks. There's not like letters that you can go pick up that are on telephone wires. But the environments definitely, did have kind of an urban, natural feel to them. And SSX was very much not so. Lots of neon, lots of big, crazy areas. SSX Tricky has a level that's in Hawaii. There's no snow in Hawaii. You can't ski in Hawaii. But I believe it's in Hawaii. Hawaii themed. And it sold very well, and I think definitely showcased what the PS2 was capable of. And then Tricky comes along, and they really doubled down on the personalities. They added Ubers, which I think Kyle doesn't like, but I'm a big fan of Ubers. They're very fun. I think Ubers are great because they really show how you should maximize points based on your knowledge of a particular level. So if you are going down a hill towards a jump, it pays to have done that level before and to know how big that jump is, so if you're going to, drop a couple Ubers in on that trick, how many you should. There's some Ubers with specific characters that are very quick. They'll just flip a board one way and then flip it back to their feet, or some where they'll do a big spin and grab it and flip around. And so it's good to know R1 is the long Uber, R2 is the short Uber, and do the appropriate Uber where it is appropriate. And so I think it's not necessarily that SSX Tricky is perceived by many as the best SSX that ever came out, but it was kind of the beginning of what people would come to know as SSX. The SSX that you played on PS3, which is also where I played it. I think it was also available on Xbox 360, but I really enjoyed the PS3 controller. I like those shoulder buttons for my SSX. That was the more of an evolution of Tricky than the original SSX. SSX Tricky kind of laid the groundwork for what each SSX game would be after that. So I think that's why people mention it so much, because it does feel kind of like the actual birth of that franchise, which I want back so bad, I can't even tell you, Keon, but we're going to move on. David Cleland, I've never written into Cup of Jones before, but this thought has crossed my mind several times now, and I want to put it out there. It's in regards to you preferring to hear the negative Nancys, as we discussed last week, than those being complimentary. This strikes me as a case of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and isn't necessarily the most constructive way to get feedback. Yes. So basically, what I said was that I like to I focus more on comments from people who are like, I don't like this thing, as opposed to people who are like, I do like it, because when I'm working on something and people say, hey, I like your show, and I'm like, great. And someone says, I don't like it for this reason. And I think that's the main thing, is that when you have criticism, they're actually giving you a roadmap. They're actually saying, I don't like this thing. I think you should change it in this way. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it. Doesn't mean we will ever agree with it. It just means that is a piece of information that I can now use. That is a alternative. That is a path I can take if I want to see something turn around here. Whether if it's I want to decrease the length of something, whether I want to up our sponsorship on Patreon, whether I want to make our numbers go up on Twitch or YouTube. It depends on what the goal is and how applicable the advice is. The comparison that I was trying to make was between those comments that say, I don't like something and here's the specific reason why, or someone that just says, great episode. That's the kind of stuff that I appreciate and enjoy and take to heart, but don't necessarily, it fuels me, it encourages me, but it doesn't change anything. I don't take a comment like, this is my favorite show, and then that helps me make that show better. Again, I'm not stopping any of you from dropping compliments like this. A lot of people, and this is very much appreciated and warms my heart every time, and I will leave a little like for you on the comments on Cup of Jones every week. But a lot of people just jump into Cup of Jones and say, you're great. Easy Allies is great. I love this. Thank you for doing what you do. I think Professor Metal Gear at the very top of the post last week just was like, keep on keeping on, Easy Allies. I think you guys are great. And so I appreciate that. If someone was to say, hey, I like this show, here's some constructive criticism, or I like this show and here's my favorite specific thing about that show, then that's something that can be applied. Then that's something where I know, oh, this is good. Maybe there's some way we can make that even better, or maybe there's some way we can focus that one part even better. It's just the comments that are like, woo, Easy Allies, that are great to hear, but are not necessarily constructive. And so it's not a critique on those comments. It just shows why I tend to not value one over the other, but focus on one more than the other. Silent Consonant. I know that settle it or defend it has been an idea that was thrown around for a while now, but with the way you guys have been doing checking out, it gave me, he said checking out, it's check-in out. It gave me an idea. What if you did settle it as a Let's Play style series? You could get two people in a room with a game they disagree on. Play the game for maybe 3 hours, cut it into 10 to 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minute episodes, and release them daily or weekly. Maybe shoot something of a post-mortem, having the two players discuss what has changed for them and what's the same. If you feel like this would be easier to stream, that could be an option, as long as chat is cool with breaks every so often to make it easier to chop up and put on YouTube in an episodic format later. Yes. I'm going to give you a short answer, Silent Consonant, which might not be rewarding, but yeah, we thought about that. We settle it as definitely something that I think would make a dynamite stream, would make a dynamite show, and obviously, as you've seen with Checking Out, we are experimenting with that format. Checking Out will evolve as time goes on, and if it is successful and if it works out really well for our schedules, that's something that you might see extended. But have more streams with more than one person is a very, 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 very popular sentiment among the Easy Allies community. So that is something that we are focused on right now. This is a beautiful first name, and I don't want to get it wrong. Ehie. Ehi? Ehi? Ehi. Ehi Ovak. I love your name. I want to get it right. I know you are probably sick of hearing this idea. I know you're probably sick of hearing people mispronounce your first name. But I've got another suggestion for crowdsourcing the editing, which seems to be among the top logistical hurdles at EZA. I don't know, among, I guess? It's not really up there. I think we're fine. When I was in college, I was able to do an internship on a short film being produced in the area. It was a one-off event and only lasted one semester. I wonder if you could work with a local university or community college to have an editing internship where students edit videos for you guys. Yes, that could potentially be done. There are some reasons why that most likely won't happen. One, non-paid internships are kind of gross. It's something that is going to happen in the entertainment industry. It's not something I want to discourage you from doing. You can get a lot of great experience. There's not a guarantee that you will. We definitely did have a lot of unpaid interns at Game Trailers that came in that got school credit for their involvement with Game Trailers back in the day. The trouble was, and the trouble remains, that anything involving outside editors, anything involving bringing in somebody else and having them edit something, doesn't mean we do less work. If anything, it means more. Because now we're perusing their work. Now we bring someone in, we gotta tell them how to produce the type of content that we do. Chances are that most likely their first couple edits are not going to be up to snuff, and we have to work with them to understand what it's like to work for Easy Allies. And so that was always kind of the trick of working with interns, is that if they were around for 3 months or 6 months, it would take 2 months for them to get going, for them to get good at what they did. And this is through no fault of their own. It's not like we just got a bunch of idiots that didn't know what they're doing. They've never worked for this company before. They've never produced this type of content before. And so there might be some editors out there that look at what we do and be like, I could not only do what you do, I could do it way better. And you may be right. But if we were to bring in other people, managing those people, giving them assignments, making sure they meet deadlines, perusing their work when it is finished, making sure that they're happy, and that we keep a persistent line of communication with them, especially if they are not local or we're not able to meet with them in person. Is a lot of work. And so it's not something that we've been jumping up and down. It is as much work, if not more, than just working on the video ourselves. And so I don't think it's just that time. And editing time obviously is part of my job. I do plenty of editing each week, as does Don Casanova and Mr. Ian Hink, and Daniel Bloodworth and Ben and Damiani have also started to do their editing. Damiani cut Easy Allies clips all by himself. So it is something that we are willing to do. It's just that if editing, meaning it's just that if we were to bring in other people, managing them would take as much time as it would take for us to be like, I'll just cut that video. So possibly if we were to put in that investment and bite the bullet for a month or two and get somebody involved, then it would be nice to have smooth sailing for the rest of the time. But then when that time is up, that would be very sad, because that means we'd have to bring in a new person and start the process all over it. Jones could become a tyrant to the interns. Yeah, see, that's the thing, is I do miss cracking the whip. I do miss, Brad's all high and mighty now. Ultima Brad's winning stuff right and left. Brad is getting, all the adoration from the community. And it's sad to see, because I used to be able to just beat that guy into shape and to be like, look, unpaid intern, wha-cha! Get back to work. Can't do it anymore. Paul Zavala, do you ever think about what life would have been like had you pursued that further, meaning acting? Especially with Amanda currently being a working actor, or at least, do you ever get that itch to perform back on stage at any point, say at a local theater or so? So if you missed last week's episode and you want to check it out, at the very end I showcased some of my musical theater exploits from high school. There are plenty other musical theaters that I did, musicals, and a couple of straight plays. What I did not show last week, I was in Bye Bye Birdie. I was in The Pirates of Penzance. I was in Our Town. I was in You Can't Take It With You. And I also did Guys and Dolls. And I did all of those. I was also in The Wiz. We did The Wiz, which sounds like a silly name, but that is a soulful interpretation of the Wizard of Oz. That has a film with Diana Ross and Michael Jackson, if you want to go check that out. There were absolutely no black people at my high school. So it was an entirely white cast of The Wiz, which I don't recommend ever watching. So that was a very interesting production. But to answer this question specifically, Paul, I get bit all the time. Like I said, what we said last week, or as I said, a lot of people reference being bit by the acting bug, and Amanda can definitely say this. She went to go see a show, and she was bit by the bug. I actually saw a production of Jesus Christ Superstar, which I showed off last week. I was Pontius Pilate, but I saw a Richard Hogue, Bye Bye Birdie, Oklahoma, Princess and the Pea, and ironically, 12 Angry Men were shows that Rick Hogue did in school. I also want to address something Rick Hogue said last week. He said, wow, he was in Bye Bye Birdie, that's awesome. I was Hugo Peabody, and I'm hilarious. I wear a white pants and a bright blue sweater, and I have a big nasally voice. It's really great. But Rick Hogue was looking at our budget for our shows and was like, where did you get this giant budget? I had a massive high school. There were 750 students, roughly, in my graduating class my senior year. It was the result of two high schools being consolidated in Palos Verdes in the 90s when I went to school. And we had a big school. We had all of our, I think our women's tennis team was like undefeated for years and years and years because you took the two best schools on the peninsula and jammed them together. And so we had a lot of very talented kids in a lot of arenas. And so we had a lot of, it was a very competitive performing arts department at that school. But yeah, Paul, to answer your question, all the time. My brother is still does a lot of theater. Maybe I'll grab my brother and have him on Cup of Jones one time. He does a lot of Shakespeare. He's currently doing Midsummer Night's Dream right now. He does some stuff if you want to support him and you are in the local Los Angeles area. He performs at a theater called the Theatricum Botanicum. It is up in Topanga Canyon, which is just north of Los Angeles, up in the mountains. It's one of my favorite venues because it's built into the mountain. It literally, the stage ends on like dirt, a staircase that just goes up into an actual mountain that has a big forest behind it. So you can imagine seeing Midsummer Night's Dream there is pretty magical. And I've seen a lot of really fun productions. I would love to do Into the Woods there because it's in the woods. Obviously Amanda does a lot of stuff. Hasn't done a lot of theater lately. She does improv, which is fun to go see. She's currently has 3 more performances left of the Improvised Generation, where she improvises a 1-hour long-form narrative improv show in the vein of Star Trek: The Next Generation. She's also doing a show right now called Glam, which is inspired by Glow. So instead of the gorgeous ladies of wrestling, it is the gorgeous ladies of arm matches, and they do arm wrestling. And she is just a crazy goofball. You can follow Ripley Improv. You can follow the Glam show on Twitter if you want to check that stuff out. But they do stuff all the time. And I go see professional theater every now and then when something cool is in town. The sequel to Phantom of the Opera is in LA right now, and I'm very tempted to see the sequel to Phantom of the Opera, whatever the heck that is about. Love Never Dies. But yeah, I get it all the time. Every time I see a show, there's a little something in me that stirs back up and is like, remember this? Remember how fun this was? But that's the thing, is I do remember how fun it was, and what was fun about it was the performing. What was fun about it was being around like-minded people, seeing the talent just exploding out of people, and see people get comfortable with the role, seeing a show come together. It was always so exciting whenever you would get costumes and be on the set. You can imagine like being in a room. I mean, we kind of got a little taste of that when we did the concert because we rehearsed it here in the garage, and then we get up on stage with the lights and the mist and the costumes and everything. And getting a set and getting like props is so rewarding as an actor, like faking something for so long, and then you actually finally get to immerse yourself in a representation of that environment. That was all the fun stuff. The not fun stuff, rehearsals nonstop, Hell Week, which is the last 1 or 2 weeks leading up to performance, getting sick, getting lack of sleep, the audition process, learning lines, just anything involved in the general work of theater is very easy for my brain to be like, yeah, that wasn't so bad. And it wasn't bad. It just, I don't enjoy that as much as I enjoy video production. And so I try to remember that every single time I see a show, and that little light bulb goes off in my head that's like, you could do this. You could leave all this video game stuff behind and you could go back to theater. But then I would do that and be like, yay, theater. And then I'd be like, oh, wait, there's all these other things I don't love as much as I enjoy playing video games and making videos talking about video games. Parasite Paladin, would it be okay if people sent challenge gifts? Like the ones that require 2 allies to face off, but a single challenge for a single, like the ones that require 2 allies to face off, but a single challenge for a single ally. As in, can an ally complete a certain game challenge? And if that ally doesn't win, the gift becomes a tournament prize. I know this shouldn't be done for everything, but I thought something like this may be appropriate for those really large or costly gifts, maybe as a way to reduce any guilt you might feel. Oh, that guilt is going away when it comes to presents. We don't really feel that much guilt anymore. Bring on the presents. Here's the thing, Parasite Paladin, and this goes out to anyone listening, whether you are a patron of Easy Allies, hopefully you are if you're watching Cup of Jones. Sure, send us stuff, that's fine. But understand that especially if this involves specific allies, we can't make promises. The lovely Mr. Greg Kettering, aka Dark Knight, sent us a lot of challenges in the early days of EZA where Michael Huber and I competed against each other. I will admit those were emotional competitions, man. He whooped my butt real good at the multiplayer modes in both GoldenEye and Halo, two games that I consider myself fairly good at. Definitely better at multiplayer in GoldenEye than I am at Halo. And Huber is he's younger than me, he's sharper than me, he's got more energy than me, he's better at shooters than I am. And I'm just going to have to accept that. And I wouldn't have known that for Greg Kettering. But there was a little bit of pressure there because we would get a gift and we were like, oh, yeah, that would be fun. But like, what if it wasn't? You know, like what if it was a challenge that we thought maybe possibly wasn't appropriate or somebody didn't want to be involved in? Like we said for Don's Design Lab tonight, just because we put Don's name in there doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the judge. That is up to Don. You know, if we assign something and we create a project ourselves and someone within Easy Ally says, yeah, I want to work on that project, and then later we check in with them, we're like, how's that going? And they're like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Then we'd be like, what? No, do it. You know, we'd crack the whip and we'd be like, you said you were going to do that, do it. Unless there were, valid reasons for them not working on that. And the thing is with you sending in gifts is there was not that prior agreement between ourselves or between the Easy Allies and our community. And so if we were to get a gift, there's no promise that we would actually do that challenge. So if you were to send us something, go for it if you want to, but understand that that does not mean we are contractually obligated to jump through whatever hoops you have designed needed to be jumped through before that present. We might discourage you from sending gifts again to be like, yay, a gift, challenge, rip that up, gifts. But I just want to say, first and foremost, that we reserve any right to take whatever present given to us at P.O. Box 11149, Marina Del Rey, California, that is sent to us. Andy Zolkeefly, if you recalled, Andy Zolkeefly's feeling himself, you ready? If you recall, during one of the episodes of Cup of Jones, I mentioned my skepticism about Sea of Thieves. Well, it's finally out, and just as I expected, this game is not well received. Same goes to games like No Man's Sky and Evolve, where it sounds too good to be true, only to turn out to be a huge disappointment upon release. Do you think that gamers and journalists like yourself should be more skeptical, as opposed to just be excited, for future games that received so much hype for being called groundbreaking or promising features that are too good to be true, rather than acting like 10-year-olds? So acting like 10-year-olds is really great. I'm going to underline that because I love that. So apparently when we talked about Sea of Thieves, we were all 10-year-olds. There's a lot going on here. One, I'm sure we were critical of Sea of Thieves. I'm sure we were nervous about Sea of Thieves. I'm sure you can go back to Frame Trap or the Easy Allies podcast or a group stream where one of us discussed Sea of Thieves and said, there is a possibility this is not going to end well. There's a possibility that this could not work out. The same is true of Destiny. The same is true of anything that requires people to stick around for an extended period of time and keep playing their game. It's also worth noting, and I was maybe going to mention this offhand, but we did get a Sea of Thieves question. On Sunday night, from 11 p.m. until 2 a.m., I played Sea of Thieves with my friends from high school, with these Star Wars friends that I talked about, that I hung out with in the 90s. Specifically with my good friend who wrote Star Wars the Musical, and my friend Mike Buddy, who is, you might know from the Game Trailers days, one of the co-founders, original, of GameTrailers.com, who played Greedo in Star Wars the Musical. And I got to admit, it was probably the most enjoyable multiplayer session I've had in 2018. Granted, I haven't played a lot of Monster Hunter World, so if I had joined weekly hunts, that might surpass that. We had so much fun playing this game, and all of us had played it before. This was not their first time playing it. It was our first time playing it together, and I'm not going to tell you that the missions we went on were well designed. We just went and dug up treasure chests and killed a bunch of skeletons. We did not encounter, and this was odd, and the 3 hours playing did not encounter one solitary ship, even on the horizon. The seas of the Caribbean were open wide just to us. It was our big bathtub of joy. And I had a lot of fun, and it wasn't surprising to me. That fun was based on my interpretation of what would make that game fun to begin with. So I don't regret the things that I said about Sea of Thieves. I don't think the things that I said about Sea of Thieves were wrong. When I first played Sea of Thieves multiplayer with actually other human beings was at E3 last year, and I played with three of the gals from What's Good Games. And we had so much fun, and a lot of the fun that we had was in things going wrong. You know, it's fun to not actually notice that your ship hit something, and then somebody decides to go down below deck and be like, "Oh no, there's water everywhere." We did completely lose a ship at one time, and then our chests were floating in the water, and I grabbed one, and I'm trying to get it back to shore, and they're like, "Jones, there's a shark behind you," and I don't have time to look around and see the shark, and I'm getting towards the shore. So here you have this game that, does it have longevity? Possibly not. Should there have been more in the game at launch? Yes. Do I think the game is a 6.5? I think that is a very accurate score. That is what Brad Ellis gave that game. Are there many things to be frustrated about with Sea of Thieves? Yeah. Can you have a really good time with Sea of Thieves? Yes. You can have a tremendously good time. I am looking forward so much to the next time my friends and I can gather to play Sea of Thieves. So the thing about game criticism is I always try to frame it with the person that is going to be playing this game in mind. I always try to articulate my opinion so that they're understood by specific types of consumers. Spider-Man is one of my most anticipated games of 2018. If you hate Spider-Man, you're not going to like that game. So if Andy Zolkeefli, if you were a non-Spider-Man fan, if you were Marvel adjacent, you know, if you were thumbs down with web slingers, there's nothing I could say. You would look at every single opinion I had about that game like I was nuts, because you're like, I don't understand. I don't like open world games. I don't like superhero games. I don't like games that have this kind of mobility. I don't like doing random crimes. I think the story is very adversely affected when you have an open world game because you don't have a single thread. I prefer games like Last of Us that are more linear. That's not the game for you, you know? And if you're like, if a game like Sea of Thieves has no content, then it has no value to me. And just like Huber likes to say with Swimming in Sevens, there are games that I play that I would be like, oh, I had a lot of fun playing this game this weekend. This game was really fun, you know, silly and fun, and it was great. And then someone, if I knew them, would be like, cool, should I play it? I'd be like, no, you'd hate it. You know, I have that moment with Amanda a lot, where she'll come in and she'll see me playing a game. She's like, would I like this? And I'm like, no. You wouldn't like it. It's no. A Way Out was one of those games. She was like, this is kind of fun. It seems co-op. I think we would enjoy this. And I'm like, I don't know if this game is your cup of tea. Just thematically. I don't know if she would enjoy it. Swords of Ditto, I think she would enjoy. Dragon Quest Builders, I think she would enjoy. And so you can have fun with games that need a lot of work. You can have fun with games that we need to make an example of to show other publishers how not to launch games like this. Those games still have value. Those games can still be fun. And I really think, correct me if I'm wrong, and I would actually, because this would help me do my job better. Andy, if there's a comment that I made previously on Sea of Thieves that you think is in contrast to the point that I just made, let me know, and I will try to be a better journalist and not be too excited about those things. My final comment on the matter is, which is actually interesting because I found myself to be very critical when it comes to scores now that we have started Easy Allies. Almost every review that I've put up at Easy Allies, my score is at like the bottom of the Metacritic. I gave Horizon Zero Wilds an 8. A lot of people thought that game was better. What was the last game I reviewed? Far Cry 5. I saw a lot of people giving that game 9s, and I thought that was just an 8. I thought it was fun, but so I find myself way more critical now at Easy Allies, but obviously there's a lot more conversation that happens at Easy Allies outside of the reviews that we do, and we tend to be a little more positive, and the positivity is not a promise. You know, we're not, obviously with games like Sea of Thieves, and I would like to think, and I believe that this was the sentiment at the time, that the success of this game is going to hinge on how much content is in there. We are playing alphas and betas and they're fun, but we do not know yet if there's a progression. There's lots of NPCs on these islands that are just kind of staring at us that we can't click on, that we can't do anything. I don't know what you sell. I don't know what quests you give. I don't know what options you provide to the player once this game finally launches. Sea of Thieves launches. You go to that NPC. Spoiler alert, not a lot. So you're always waiting for that shoe to drop. You're always waiting for that moment to really find out, is this going to be worth it? Is this game going to slam dunk for the long run? There's no way to know. And so if you have a genuine fun experience, if you play something like Sea of Thieves that, for all of its faults, is unlike any game, is unlike most games, I would say. There's so many unique, fascinating things. Certainly in the pirate genre, I have never, ever in my life played a game like Sea of Thieves. That is remarkable. That is worth noting. That could be of tremendous value to people. Now that it is launched, as quickly as possible, we try to get the word out that it's not going to keep you happy for that long if you are looking for that type of engagement from a game that gives you reasons to invest. Personally, for me, I bought a new pair of gloves. I very much want a pair of boots and a new coat. I think that will end my progression in Sea of Thieves. I want to look a little bit better than I look right now, and I'm willing to put in the time into that game to get there, whether that takes me all year or I achieve that within the next couple months. Thankfully, there's not a lot of games in the next couple months leading up to E3 that I'm obsessed with. But I think that is my longest answer. God, we are already at an hour and a half, and I only got 8 pages this week, and I'm only on page 5. But yeah, I'll try not to act like a 10-year-old. Tim Beshan, what is your favorite workout music? I always listen to the Rocky soundtrack to get me pumped. The Rocky soundtrack, meaning the first Rocky film. There's 4 of them, baby. You got it, Rocky 4. Don't write off Rocky 4. Rocky 4 is a really, really good soundtrack, especially for working out. There's no easy way out. Do you even listen to music while working out? Sometimes I listen to my audiobook or Cup of Jones while jogging. Aw. Hey, how's your jog going, Tim? How's your jog going? Come on, Tim. Make it happen. Come on, one foot in front of the other. You can do it. Deep breaths. No, I don't, because when I work out now, I work out with Sean, German Efficiency Clinton, so I can't, we're going to do this machine now. Oh, I'm sorry, what? I was listening to, the Game Over Greggy show. What? I don't. Sean and I talk about video games. It's funny. I always feel like the guy that Chris used to work for on Family Guy, that John Benjamin did the voice for, where he's like, I gotta know what you think about those things. That's how I kind of feel with Sean, where it's like I need that in-person reaction to a lot of the stuff that he's working on. I think he's currently playing through Kingdom Hearts right now, so it's fun to get his Kingdom Hearts 2, I believe. So he was like, I just got to the Pirates world. It was fun. And I'm like, I play a lot of VR this weekend. I want to talk about that. And I don't listen to music now when I jog, because all the time I jog now, even though I haven't gone jogging in a while, I jog with Amanda. And so actually I tried that. The first time I went jogging with Amanda, I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to music. And she's like, no, you're not. We're going to be talking. And I was like, I can't like put it in 1 year and talk to you. And she was like, no, you are running with me. You are talking with me. So I don't anymore. But when I used to, other than Rocky 4, the Tron Legacy soundtrack is aces when it comes to working out. Specifically jogging. The Tron Legacy soundtrack is really good. There's a couple tracks in there that I could just put on loop for like 20 minutes and have a good, successful run. Karsten Kohler, I was wondering, since you always happily speak about Disneyland and Disney World, if you visited in the past Disneyland Tokyo and Disney Sea, yes, which you enjoyed more? Disney Sea, definitely. I am often told by other people who visit Japan that Disney Sea is kind of unique. It is extremely unique. And they enjoyed both parks, but the opinion mostly differs when it comes to the one they enjoyed more. Did you have also the chance to visit Fuji Q Highland in Japan? I did not, which is often compared with Six Flags Magic Mountain, which I immensely enjoyed during one of my trips to California. Also, I was wondering if you ever visited Europa Park in Germany. I have not, which got in the past some awards for the best amusement park in the world. I often visited it when I was still living in Germany until 9 years ago, and it's one of the things I miss sometimes. Europa Park, Fuji Q Highland. Okay. Disney Sea is really great. I could go on and on and on about Disney Sea. I'm going to save the viewers that don't like me talking about Disneyland by just mentioning one thing I really enjoyed about Disney Sea that I think I've mentioned before on Cup of Jones, but hey, it's Disneyland. There is a harbor area in Disney Sea. I believe it is on the west side of the park. That is kind of a Mediterranean vibe. It's kind of like Venice. It's kind of like California, maybe like a little bit of New Jersey in there. But it's just kind of like a tribute to the harbor towns of the world. And there is a big gate that opens up and looks out on the Pacific Ocean. And I think that's fascinating. It is the only, certainly the only Disney park, and potentially, I mean, there's bodies of water in Florida, some man-made, that you can see from various parts. But that is the only ocean-adjacent Disney park, I believe, in existence. And it is pretty neat to be inside of a Disney park and look out, and there's the horizon, y'all. Hell's Foxes, is there any buzz in the office for Wipeout VR and PSVR? I haven't heard a lot of the allies talking about it. I've seen a lot of sentiment on social media, and I'm just hungry for more VR. So that's something I should probably check out. We were gifted an Oculus by the Oculus team, and so I have been binging that. There was a free weekend, from what I could tell, on Oculus games this weekend, and so I binged a lot this weekend on Oculus VR. Finished up Lone Echo, played Arizona Sunshine from start to finish, which was very good and has very bad parts of it as well. But I have not checked out Wipeout VR. It's intimidating, I will tell you. Wipeout VR looks terrifying. Plenty calling it the killer app for the headset, and raves from Digital Foundry and critics across the board. When I encouraged my buddy to try it, all he could say was, "Now this is pod racing." I like that I don't think there's any Batman questions, but we have filled the Star Wars and Disneyland quota so far. No buzz in the office, but I will try that out. I will make a promise to try out Wipeout VR on PSVR, because that does look fascinating. Ibrahim Sozer, I want to make a case for changing the sponsorship tiers. Your audience has expanded since forming EZA, and that tier came from a time, I'm guessing the top tier, I don't know, came from a time you believed 500 patrons would join you, but now it's 6,000 and over 150,000 YouTube subscribers. This isn't an idea to get you guys more money to 45K, but to stop undermining your value to your sponsors. You can have 1 or 2 500 sponsors for other podcasts, such as Frame Trap, Friend Code, Tabletop Escapades, Reaction Shots, 5 $1,000 EZA podcast sponsors, and 1 1,500 major sponsor. We've talked about having a major sponsor for a while. I don't know what that would entail. We've had some people say that if I hear you talking about sponsors, I'm out, and for that reason, I'm gone. Potentially, they don't want to hear that stuff up front, and we were like, I guess that's what that would be if we had like a mega sponsor. They would sponsor everything, any show that you watched on Easy Allies at some point. We would mention the major sponsor. I'll tell you one reason I'm not necessarily comfortable upping the EZA podcast here. I wonder if there's any comment from Rick Hogue. I'm in? Hogue's in. All right, Hogue. Pay up. I would certainly be, supply and demand. I would certainly be curious or incentivized to up our $500 EZA podcast tier to $1,000 if we had more than 9 people a month that were interested in being sponsors. So 9 is the cap. 9 is as long as we want the Easy podcast halftime to be. If we had 20 people that were like, we want to be a sponsor of Easy Allies for the podcast, and I'd be like, well, it is time to up that pledge, because up that dollar amount. I am intrigued with the idea of having other sponsors for other shows. I do know that hosts of our other podcasts have made attempts and are continually making attempts and are very interested in getting outside sponsorship outside of our Patreon for those podcasts. So that is potentially a reason why some of those podcasts have not been incorporated into Patreon for those tiers, because I love our sponsors. I love our sponsors are different than a lot of the other podcasts. I love that our sponsors are unique. I love that we have a personal relationship with many of our sponsors of the Easy Allies podcast and of Frame Trap. But at the same time, we did kind of hamstring ourselves just a little bit by attaching our sponsorship to Patreon. So then we're obviously not going to bring in, even if people reached out to us and said, hey, I am a sponsor. I want to sponsor the Easy Allies podcast, but I want to change up how that works. We would not be willing to do that, because that would be undermining the podcast sponsors that we already have. And so were we to be approached by outside sponsors that were not interested in being a part of the Patreon, we would have to work that out in a separate way. That in a way that does not make our sponsors feel like their sponsorship is being undervalued in some way. But the restructuring Patreon tiers is what we're all about right now, and so I will certainly pass on that tip to the other allies and see what they think about it. Bjornar Haraldsvik, I completed Resident Evil 2 for the first time this weekend. I played as Claire first, enjoying the game so much I completed it a second time as Leon. I hope you did, because if you just played as Claire, you didn't play Resident Evil 2. Any chance for Resident Evil 2 Remake being shadow dropped at E3? No way they're shadow dropping that. No way. Zero chance from me. Also, a Parappa cover coaster for Kyle and a surprise Capcom game cover coaster for you is on its way. A surprise Capcom game cover coaster for me. Cover coaster meaning, I believe it was Bjornar Haraldsvik that sent us this beauty, if you haven't seen it. Love this. Look at that. Look at this gem. It is a coaster that is the CD cover of Resident Evil 2 for the PlayStation. Huber's great. Had a really great moment from Huber the other day because he came in to shoot the Huber Syndrome for WrestleMania. And he comes in and we're talking, and I'm sitting at my desk, and he comes by like, excuse me, and he grabs that. So like that, this is Huber's official coaster now whenever he shoots stuff for Easy Allies, as it should be. I will actually use that as a coaster right now. Boop. Yeah, no chance for that. So that specifically answers your question, but a surprise Capcom game. Maybe Resident Evil Remake? I don't have a long history with Capcom. I'm not a big Mega Man fan. Mega Man's fantastic. I love Mega Man. I just didn't grow up playing those games. Not a big Street Fighter guy. I'm not currently playing Monster Hunter World. Onimusha, I guess, maybe? I don't know. I'm curious what Capcom game I talked about. It's got to be Resident Evil. Because Castlevania is Konami's. You piqued my interest. Man, I got 2 more pages left. I only had 8 pages, and we're still, doesn't matter. 1140 every time. Real War 44. Over the last 2 years or so, I've started playing through the Final Fantasy series for the first time. I've decided that this franchise was one I needed to play since I've avoided JRPGs for so long. I'm playing through them chronologically from 1 to 13, excluding 15 since I wanted to play it when it was released, and skipping MMOs, which is smart. To date, just watch a couple Damiani streams, you're good. To date, I've completed 15, 1, 2, and 3, and I'm currently about a third of the way through 4, if I had to guess. My question is this. Is there a games franchise you have missed out on that you have plans, no matter how vague, to eventually getting around to Mass Effect? There you go. I played Mass Effect 1 for 2 or 3 hours, and I was good. I don't think it was like, this game's bad, I'm going to play something else. I just ended up playing something else. So, no slight against Mass Effect, but I've always been very, very, very curious to go back and check those games out. Morgan Mohala, and Dragon Quest. I'm curious to check out Dragon Quest XI when it comes out soon. Yeah. Morgan Mohala, how would you describe your current stage in life and what you want out of your next one? Please take a moment to reflect on this question and answer as honestly as you are comfortable. Okay, well, I'm ready to answer the question now, but Morgan Walhalla says take a moment to reflect on this question, so I will. Talk amongst yourselves. Maybe think about your phases of life, and I'll just let that sink in for a moment. Yeah. Okay, I'm ready. Let's talk about previous phases first. There was the I'm out of college, let's make a website phase. Then we sell to Viacom. Now I'm working at Game Trailers and MTV Networks. There's that phase. Then there was the manager phase, which was scary as hell, where we move over to Defy. Now I'm the manager, and now I'm the editor-in-chief of Game Trailers, and now I'm making all sorts of crazy, scary decisions, and just constantly leaning on Daniel Bloodworth and being like, help me organize all of this. And now I think the biggest phase shift for me moving forward is to not do all-nighters anymore, to not be so committed to actually producing the art that I am helping produce, create the art that I'm helping produce, maybe like taking a more producer role. I remember, like, I think it started in the 90s, and it's fascinating to go back and look at it now. And I don't know if any of you remember this, if you're in your 30s and you grew up in that era. But remember when, like, Spielberg stopped directing stuff, really, and just produced like 1,000 things? Like, remember, like, it seemed like almost every film that was coming out was like executive producer Steven Spielberg, and you're like, how involved was he in this? And there's really no way to know. It's like, I remember seeing like the Flintstones with John Goodman, and I'm like, executive producer Steven Spielberg. Like, oh, like, what does that mean? Like, I think he produced Back to the Future too. Like, Back to the Future as well, and probably Back to the Future 2, part 2 technically. And so I would love that. I would love to step back. I love being on camera. I want to do Cup of Jones forever because I'm so grateful. This is crazy that all of you are hanging out with me and care what I have to say and are helping us with our business. So Cup of Jones is rad. I love doing that. But like editing retros, I would love handing that off to somebody else. Editing reviews, I would be more than happy passing that off to somebody else. Reading VO for reviews, I want to do that forever if I can. But yeah, managing this big crazy thing is fun, and is educational. I learn lessons rapid fire, but at the same time, I would love to take a back seat. Also to encourage new people. You know, you asked, is Amanda officially an ally? I mean, not technically, but I would love to bring in new people. I know a lot of very talented people that live here locally in Los Angeles. I know a lot of talented people that are just stepping into the world of producing podcasts, producing YouTube content, doing live streams. I would love to showcase their work and then help them be better, help them make Easy Allies better. And so that, I think, would be the next phase, or the next stage in my life would be to step away from some of the groundwork that I do. The problem is, I love editing so much; it is such a fun process. It's addicting to continue to do the things at Easy Allies that I know I'm good at, that I know I can do well. It's really exciting to cut this review for God of War, to work on that with Huber. I remember being tickled back in the GT days when I stopped editing reviews for a while, and Huber came into my office and he's like, I want you to cut the review for The Evil Within. And I was like, Huber, I would love to do that. And so it is fun to just step in and just get stuff done and get your hands dirty. But at the same time, maybe it's time for other people to get Easy Allies wants to be a publisher. Why, Peter? You're a pirate. So will Easy Allies videos now have a credit where for Damiani produced by or something? Yeah, potentially. So yeah, there we go. That's the next stage. That's the next episode. Rob, Bob, Will. I absolutely loved The Busted Trifecta, which is a new show from Don Casanova. You can check on youtube.com/Easy Allies. Although I'll admit I'm a sucker for anything remotely noir adjacent. Third time we've said adjacent in this episode. And I feel it has somewhat flown under the radar. How has the perception been on your end? Great. I'm sure there's no lack of ideas for different Patreon goals being tossed around, but would the Easy Allies seasonal scripted show goal be feasible? I ask that more from the perspective of, are you guys overflowing with ideas like that, or is Busted Trifecta more of a diamond in the rough? I wouldn't want anything to feel forced. I also wouldn't want to ask for something when the overall demand is not there. Demand is definitely there. People like it when we do silly stuff like that. People want something akin to a not funny GT to return. I like it when these things... Busted Trifecta came from Don and Don's imagination and Don's desire to do it. Don approached us and said, I have this show. It's called The Busted Trifecta. It's about horse racing. You're all in it. Let's do it. And we were all like, oh, all right. And so when we work on that, he's just like, here's your script. Read this. And we're like, okay. And then we do it. And so I like the spontaneity of that. I like that it was really something that Don wanted to do. And I don't know. I wouldn't want us to feel obligated to do a seasonal scripted show and then have that potentially impact the creativity involved, because it's not something that, I had this great idea and I want to do it. It's, we got to do this. And so maybe we'll do this idea this month. I also think specifically, if we had something like Busted Trifecta that we did a pilot of and then asked for Patreon funding to produce the rest of it, similar to how we did Box Peak, I think that would be a much bigger draw, because you would see the first episode and you would have an idea of where that's going. Or, Kyle did his pitch for Box Peak, kind of explaining the design and a rough outline of what the plot would be. So you did have an understanding before, we asked you to invest. And so just saying we're going to make a scripted thing, I don't know if that would necessarily move the needle, as opposed to specifically saying we want to do this show. I will be honest, and this is a failing on my part and something that I have wrestled with for the last couple of months. I am really, really proud of Kyle Bossman's work on Box Peak. I think it's tremendous. I am, and obviously Don's work on Busted Trifecta. Busted Trifecta is a lot of work. Box Peaks is a little bit more work. It's a little bit more of a grueling undertaking on Kyle's part. And I was inspired greatly by Box Peak. And I have had many moments where I have sat alone in silence by myself, being like, okay, Jones, you're creative, you're a film major. Kyle's doing that with Box Peak. What are you going to do? And I got nothing. I have no ideas. I do have ideas, but they're not viral. They're not. I think Box Peak is something we could do that I think will create a tremendous amount of outreach for us at Easy Allies. I think we will introduce a lot of people to Easy Allies through Box Peak. I don't think necessarily Busted Trifecta accomplishes that. I think Busted Trifecta is a great vehicle for Don. I think Busted Trifecta is very different. I think it adds a tangy, delicious spice to the goulash of Easy Allies. And I think obviously Don is Don, and I would not trade Don for anyone in the world. And so I think Busted Trifecta is fascinating. I am so much looking forward to the next episode. I know I've said this before, but like, wait till you see Damiani, his role in the Busted Trifecta. I'm so happy that he and I have a relationship specifically among the characters that Don created for that. So yeah, will it be feasible? I don't think so. I don't think that is. I will make the prediction now that will not be one of the tiers that you will hear about very soon when we shuffle all those tiers around. But will there be more scripted shows? Are we inspired? Do I want to make scripted shows? Yes. Irunion or Air Union. So Ubisoft just announced Splinter Cell's Sam Fisher for Ghost Recon Wildlands. If you haven't heard about that, voiced by Michael Ironside. Will you be partaking in this crossover? I should. Yes, I want to. I can't make promises because I don't know what we're going to be working on when this actually comes out. I don't know the date specifically, and I can't tell you what my life will be like at that point. But I really want to. I sampled for a hot second the Predator update that they did, but I have not really spent a lot of time with that as well. So there is some, and they also added some crazy progression system to Wildlands I'm actually kind of in a lull right now with games that I'm really addicted to, which is a weird feeling. Like I was obsessed with Far Cry, and I was obsessed with Far Cry Arcade, and this weekend I was obsessed with finishing Lone Echo, and now all that's behind me. So yeah, it might be a good time to accept bringing a new game into my life. It might be time to return to Ghost Recon Wildlands, because I played that a lot. Woohoo! Discarded Digit. Recently, the official Animal Crossing site was under construction. For a while, the placeholder text on the site were quotes from Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, and not really. They were, what is the name? Maybe Chad can help me with this. There's a word for it. New episode when of the Busted Trifecta? Oh, there you go. The new episodes of Busted Trifecta are going up on the site schedule. It may just say that we're currently working on it, but that little reminder for Bloodworth there. See, even Bloodworth forgets things every now and then. What is the name of the speak that you? It's like sim over slepty flobler flarbler. It's like when you're creating a website and you're like, oh, I just want to see how text looks in that box. You just put in nonsense. You put in this language that you can copy from a website, or you can tell the website or the web page software that you're building. Lorem ipsum. We have one. Ricardo Piontini says lorem ipsum. Lorem ipsum seems to be the consensus. Lorem ipsum. Okay. That's the language that web designers use when they just need a body of text. At least until Nintendo updated it with their official copy. Do you think that there was any symbolic meaning to the choice of placeholder? Is this not a cruel joke? Discarded Digit. I am discarding whatever potentially this could mean for the future of Animal Crossing. I am not going to get emotionally invested in Animal Crossing. A lot of people are like, well, new game coming. That proves it right there. No, it doesn't prove it at all. It just proves that they were updating their website. That means potentially nothing. That could be them just being like, hey, Animal Crossing not Wild World. What the heck is the mobile app? Pocket Camp. Pocket Camp's doing really well. It's time to update that website to reflect all the cool new things coming to Pocket Camp. If you want to get into the leak/teaser audience, like, yeah, it's slightly suspicious. But am I going to now wake up every morning being like, new Animal Crossing's coming? No, I am not going. No, 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 no. As Genesis, regarding the potential survey, we had talked about the prospect of putting a survey up on Patreon, the pluses and minuses of doing that. I think it's a great idea, and I hope you implement it to great results. I do have a few questions about it. One, have you considered an incentive to get more people, specifically non-patrons, to fill out the survey? I don't know how easy or difficult it would be, but I think a 1 month free $5 tier benefit might entice more non-patrons to fill it out. Interesting. Number two, you mentioned some of the allies support the survey idea. I wonder if Ian is one of them. How much sway do you have to propose he makes it in game form? It makes a game worth the survey. I don't know. It's up to him. Number three, would you share the results with us here on Cup of Jones? Oh, yeah. That would be the editorial. We would go all through that. So we haven't set up a specific quote-unquote survey, but as I mentioned before, we have 2 posts that if you want to raise your voice and make it heard and let us know what you would like to see for the future of Easy Allies. We have a post from myself where we talk about dropping down to 39K for the month of April and potential ways that we can turn that thing around, and fixes and just new ideas and creative things that you would like to see happen within Easy Allies. You can go and check that out. That is technically a survey. And as I mentioned before, Michael Damiani put up a post specifically about E3. So if you want to go check that out, you can give us suggestions for what you would like to see in the E3 2018 Easy Allies coverage. Wow, that is coming up. Jay Zeifer, and you know what's coming up? Judges Week is coming up. Judges Week is in May. Judges Week is the best. Oh, I love Judges Week. Jay Zeifer, I find before leveraging criticism, it's always best to seek understanding. I have a handful of questions relating to the scripted content Easy Allies puts out on your YouTube channel. To start, what's the script editing process like among the group? That depends. Boxpeak went through lots of script editing. Boxpeak was given to, dialogue was given to different people to show what characters would be like, and then we were able to give input. We were able to give input in the booth. If we didn't like a line of dialogue, we could change that. A lot of changes were made following the first episode when that premiered during our concert. Kyle noticed a couple things and was like, I'm going to change that character because of how people reacted to different things. When we record voiceover for Boxpeak, Kyle then takes that voiceover and then puts it into the episode, and then he might then make changes, either to a performance or might change a line here or there, might add something. And so the editing process is very fluid for Boxpeak. The editing process for Busted Trifecta is locked. For Busted Trifecta, we get a script from Don, and that's what we're doing, baby. I think I changed a couple of things just to make it easier to read. There were a couple of things where I was like, that reads kind of strange. I'm going to move this line around here, or just change the verbiage there, maybe swap an adjective out. But it is such a crystal clear vision for Busted Trifecta that who are we to tell Don Casanova what that should be? How many drafts and peer reviews would you say something like a review receives before it's sent over to you for voice work? 2 maximum. You know, scripts written, sent to Bloodworth. He has notes, sends it back. They have notes, they send that back. There might be one more review from Bloodworth. There's also stuff to keep in mind where some information about games are not known until right before we're able to cut the reviews. So there might be online modes that are not available. Sometimes I'll get scripts that have, like, pieces in them that's like, this is where the multiplayer part will go, and like, okay, so I'll just read everything but that and then do a pickup after the fact. And like I said before, sometimes I will read a review script and then the writer of that review script will hear me read it and be like, that sounds bad, when someone says it out loud, and then they'll change stuff. How many people are involved in the process? 3, 4, depends. Or something I reviewed recently where I definitely leaned on someone else's expertise. Oh, Dragon Quest Builders. When I reviewed that, Ben was very involved in that review process. I sent him that script before I was done and asked for his feedback. What about something more meaty like a retrospective? 3, when we did the Souls retrospective, I had Sean Clinton read a couple of scripts just to offer his insight. And obviously Ian is very passionate about that series, but it was mostly Blood and myself and Brad. Mostly Brad and Blood. On the subject of retrospectives, what do you see as the objectives of that work? What are you trying to achieve? Lots of questions here. What are you trying to achieve in each video, and who specifically is the target audience? Is there a template or guideline you follow, or does everything depend on the game? Everything depends on the game and the person. Brad brought his own flavor. Brad was very quote heavy, which I thought was great. And Blood kind of set that example with Deus Ex. Deus Ex had more quotes from Spectre and the other people that worked on it than we typically do. When I did the Deus Ex retrospective, I actually put those quotes on screen, asked Brad if he wanted me to do that. He said no, he'd rather focus on the gameplay instead. And so it's really up to the writer for creatively how they want that stuff perceived. Who is the audience of retrospectives for? Hopefully everybody, because you either played the franchise or you didn't. You either have tried out Souls or you haven't. And so if you have tried Souls, I want this to be a walk down memory lane. I want you to remember, we talk about music a lot with retrospectives. I want you to hear the music. I want you to see the footage. I want to tease you with moments where I'm just, maybe some of your favorite moments I'm not really dwelling on for a long period of time, because there tends to be a lot of pride with people if they like a franchise. When you kind of like go over something they're familiar with a little too much, they kind of get bored because they're like, I know all this information. When you take their favorite moments and really showcase them too much, they tend to kind of take away the drama of it. So I really like when I see a moment that I know works well, to kind of slip it in there, realizing that for the average viewer, they're just going to walk right past the shot and not really realize what they're looking at when combined with the text that they're listening to at the same time. But possibly people who are familiar with the franchise are like, I see what you did there, Jones. Nice. Or you aren't familiar with that franchise and then you're learning everything for the first time. Case in point, I didn't know that Sony didn't publish Demon Souls in the States, and that Shuhei Yoshida was like sad that he was like, I thought the game was crap. He actually said, quote, I thought the game was crap. Like I didn't know that. I thought that was great. So I even if it's a franchise that I'm very familiar with, Star Wars, Final Fantasy, Castlevania, there's always something that I learned that I didn't know, and so it's fun to pass on that information to the audience as well. The Chris Griffin, gotta get it under 2 hours if it's 8 pages. The Chris Griffin, all of the news on Spider-Man has got me thinking about my favorite hero, Superman. While I really enjoyed the last few Superman games, I also recognize their faults. Well, I mean, technically Injustice 2 is a Superman game. What do you think would make a truly great Superman game? Superman Returns was kind of onto something. It's got to be open world. Kind of weird to just limit it to Metropolis, although creating Metropolis and then other cities would be difficult, but it'd be great if the Watchtower was in it. It'd be cool if there were, there are not a lot of Superman games that let you fly around in space, but that's certainly something that Superman does. It would be fun if Arkham style, if a lot of, if like Green Lantern was in one mission, if Wonder Woman was in one mission, if characters showed up to help you with different objectives. Superman Returns had a good idea with having the city be the health meter. So like you can be knocked out, you can be like slowed and like, punched to the floor, or maybe somebody can put something heavy on you that you have to like lift off, but like it's real hard to kill Superman. And so it's getting a game over in a Superman game will likely not happen because your health is depleted. Superman Returns took the angle that Metropolis itself had the health meter, and it was on you to make sure that things weren't destroyed. I don't know if having a Metropolis health meter makes sense. Maybe just splitting that up, and obviously civilians or buildings or vehicles or devices, they have health meters, and you have to protect them and stop them from being destroyed. What I think would fascinate me, and bringing up Mass Effect again, from my limited understanding of the specifics of the Mass Effect franchise, what it seemed like they were going for was the difficulty of having a space-wide menu of options. Potentially a lot of people screaming. I think there was like one trailer for Mass Effect where someone was screaming in Shepard's ear and he shut off the frequency and was like, we got to let him go. We got to go do this. And so it really suggested that you're going to have to make some tough decisions in this game because you're not going to be able to save everybody. And that would be fascinating to explore in a Superman game, that they were literally kind of like, in Witcher, when you bring on the Witcher sense and all of a sudden you can hear everything, like you can hear little rustles of leaves and you can hear things moving in the brush. It'd be fascinating if you could maybe do that, this kind of sense, like a spider sense, where you could just focus in and hear all of this stuff happening around the city. So like at once there's like a bank robbery that's happening. Somebody just stole that lady's purse. You can hear Lex Luthor planning something. There was an explosion over there somewhere. Who knows what that could be? And you have to decide, like, I'm gonna go do that. And then you maybe hear on the news or on the radio or reading a paper, you weren't there and those people died and you missed that. And so that I feel is crucial to Superman, and the fact that a lot of superheroes, and is what I think is fascinating about that character. A lot of people write off Superman when it comes to film and television as just like not, this is boring, can't really do a lot with him. I disagree. I think Superman's fascinating. I gotta do the editorial too. We're going longer than 2 hours, folks. It's happening. Gotta wrap it up by 12:30 because we're shooting a tiny reaction shots episode. But I will say this about Superman. He has to make those tough decisions. Like when you're Spider-Man and you're like, when you see like he says in Civil War, when you get these powers and you don't do something, it's hard not to feel that that's your fault. It's hard not to feel that you should have done something and that you should feel guilty for not helping people. Well, Superman can fly at the speed of light and can lift anything and can really fight anybody. And so when Superman fails, I think the guilt is so much stronger because he's got to find his place in this world. He's not from Earth, so is he? Am I a human? Am I not? Like, how close should I be to these people? Should I really have a relationship with Lois? Should I just be Superman? Should I not be Clark Kent? Should I not even try to understand what makes a human being a human being? What could I be expected to do? It'd be really interesting if, based on your involvement with Metropolis, if you just choose to focus on the main story and kind of let all this side stuff just happen, if you kind of let these fires burn, then that will have ramifications. You will see kind of the fallout of Metropolis, that you just seem to kind of take a vacation and worry about the big picture and not necessarily focus on some of the smaller things that I feel. Even a game like Arkham, even the whole franchise, I wish I could have done small things every now and then. I wish I could have just gone back to the Batcave and just help Alfred with stuff every now and then. I wish I could have been Bruce and just wandered around Wayne Manor. I wish I could have just helped, like the beginning of the '89 Batman, where this guy's like, hey, that guy stole my wife's purse. And then they go away and like, the Bat, come on. Like, it'd be so fun to just creep up on two guys in the back alley who are like, there's no way Batman cares about what we're doing right now because Riddler's doing his thing and Joker's doing his crazy thing and Hugo Strange and all that, like all of these people he's got much bigger fish to fry. He's not going to worry about us. And it's like, oh, guess what? Knock, knock. I'm right behind you. That would be so satisfying. And we never got that opportunity in any of the Batman games that Rocksteady made, despite how excellent all of those were. And so, if you're making a superhero game, don't underestimate the small cases. Don't underestimate the desire to kind of flex your muscles and not always be tackling the giant issues, but every now and then showing that just like, bink, like I can take care of the little tiny things because I'm a big, strong person. So yeah, there we go. So I am going to step out for just a second. Hi, I'm Brandon Jones. You can follow me at Trailer Jones. I'm going to leave and go to address a special guest that I'm going to be bringing in on this episode of Cup of Jones. So talk amongst yourselves. I will return very quickly. Special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, my special guest for today on Cup of Jones, Norbert the cat. So this is my cat. His name is Norbert. I don't know specifically what type of cat he is. He doesn't hang out in the garage a lot, so he's very curious about hanging out in the garage. Sophie gets a lot of attention, and then every now and then on Twitch and stuff, I'd say like, oh yeah, Norbert, and they're like, who's Norbert? And it's like the cat. And they're like, you have a cat? And I do have a cat. His name is Norbert. Here's Norbert. Look at Norbert. Isn't he the cutest? He's such a fluffy little guy. And he's really interesting because he's very curious. He likes to smell things. He really likes to get like up in your face and smell your nose. But at the same time, you can just grab him. And you're just like, no, you're staying here. And he's like, all right. Like, are you gonna go wandering around and you're just gonna stay here? This is his butt. Norbert is, I think you're not even like 2 years old, right, buddy? I think you're like 1.5, maybe 2. When I met Amanda, she had a cat named Albus Dumbledore, who's unfortunately no longer with us. Albus was a wizard. Okay, you want to go wander around? That's fine. I'll pick you up when I'm done with the editorial. He was a magical cat, and I miss him greatly. And it was an interesting process when Amanda was finally ready to get another cat, and We went all around LA. We must have gone to absolutely every single shelter. The process took a little bit longer than I had expected it to. Obviously Norbert is the last cat that we looked at. But there were some cats. There was a duo of cats that were best friends that the people at the shelter said you should probably buy these cats together. I think it would be a mistake to separate these cats. And I kid you not, their names were Batman and Robin. And I was like, uh-huh. And it was nice because they were a little bit older. And so, Amanda missed her older cat. And so I wonder if she, but she just wasn't feeling those cats. And so I'm like, okay, we got to make sure that we get a cat that you like. And we open up the 500th cage that we've opened up to look at these different animals. And there was a very cute cat. I think it was like a light gray or maybe even like a white colored cat. And it came right up against the gate and said hello to us. It was this adorable little cat. And behind that cat, with a cold, sitting in his little bed in the back, sneezing, was Norbert. And Amanda said, "Whoa, that cat's so fluffy. I really like him." And she picked him up and put her in his arms, and he immediately started purring like a fiend. Norbert purrs very, very loud. I wonder if he's a little nervous about being in the garage, so I don't know if I could get him to purr on the mic. We'll see if we can pull that off before we wrap up Cup of Jones today. I will never forget the joy of seeing the look on her face when we went in. So then a lot of the way a lot of these shelters work is you can get a little private time. So they have little offices where you can go in, close the door, hang out with the animal, and decide if you like their temperament or if they care for you at all. She had a little private time with Norbert, and Norbert just kept purring and seemed totally fine to just hang out with her and sit on her lap. And I remember her looking at me and giving me the look like, I think this is our cat. We named him Norbert. If any of you are not Harry Potter fans, Norbert is the name of the dragon that Hagrid adopts in the first Harry Potter book. She, obviously, Amanda's a big Harry Potter fan, and so Albus Dumbledore was our cat previously. I'm glad that the cat we have now, hey Norby, I'm glad the cat we have now has a shorter name than Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore was literally his full name. I remember one time I got a receipt I saw a receipt from the vet that said Albus Dumbledore, and I think they got every letter in there but E, and they even took out the space, so it was just Albus Dumbledore. And I remember showing Amanda, I'm like, did you not call him Albus when you registered him at the vet? And she's like, oh no, I told him his full name, which is Albus Dumbledore. And so I like that he's just Norbert the cat. Obviously Norbert is named after a dragon, and he does have kind of dragon tendencies. He likes to jump up on things like most cats do, but he's much more vocal than Albus was. He likes to scream. I give him a brush sometimes with my hairbrush when I'm in the bathroom, and that was a mistake, because whenever I first started to do that, because you hold it in his hands and he likes to check it out, and the first time he rubbed his face on the brush, he was like, that's amazing, I want more of that. And so now when I get out of the shower in the bathroom, he's at the corner of the counter just screaming at me. And apparently, I haven't witnessed this because it happens when I leave the house, but apparently when I go into the garage, he stands at the window and he yells at me to come back in the house. Norbert takes to me much more than Albus did. Albus and I got along just fine, but Albus was definitely Amanda's cat. He lived with Amanda for a few years after I met him. But I met Norbert first. I went to his cage and pointed him out for the first time, and I went to pick him up because Amanda was busy when we could actually get an opportunity to go get him. And if any of you have gotten a pet before, there's red tape you got to go through to actually get to the point where you can physically get the pet and take it home. And when that opportunity pops up, because sometimes you have to wait for that, it's irresistible to just drop everything you're doing and be like, pet time, and go and get the animal. And so they said, hey, tomorrow morning, if you want to go come and pick up Norbert, you can. And Amanda's like, I have an audition or I have rehearsal or something, or I'm doing a show, can you go get Norbert? And I was like, okay. And I didn't think about it at the time, but I kind of I get him in the cardboard box and I put him in the car and I crack open the box and then he looks up at me and I was like, oh no. I just imprinted myself upon this cat. And so he loves Amanda. They get along really well. He's very much a house cat. The moment I picked him up and carried him outside to come out here in the garage, he clamped his claws on my shoulder. He does not like being outside. We keep the door closed, but we could probably keep the door open all day and Sophie could just come in and out as she pleases, because he will just kind of sniff the doorway and just kind of look at there's a lot going on outside. Yeah, I'm kind of... He has definitely trained me. That's how cats work. When cats meow, they are training. They meow at you at different pitches, and then when you go yes, they go, that's it. That's the pitch that you like. Got it. And so they do that again. So cats don't have an inherent language. They learn your language. They learn the language that will work with you. He's loving it. He's just walking around checking stuff out. So I love this cat. He's so funny because it took me a while to get used to him because he doesn't like his head being petted. Whenever you get your hand near his head, he's like, whoa, what are you doing? But if you pet him on his, like starting on his shoulder, he likes that. He is, I thought like, oh, he's really skittish. He's not as loving as Albus was or as other cats that I know, or maybe as much as we would have liked. And then I discovered he's just kind of weird about it. Like he likes being like played with. He's just not necessarily like automatically as receptive to it. And so like, if I was to roughhouse with Albus back in the day, if I was to go up and like, you know, kind of like put my body weight onto Albus and scratch him and kind of push him around a little bit, he would tolerate it and maybe enjoy it a little bit, but the moment it was over, he would take off. And Norbert doesn't. Like I'll grab Norbert and be like, no, and he'll be struggling like, you know, let me go. And I'm like, no. And I'll like, you know, like lean on him and just kind of like knock him around. And then when I let him go, he takes 2 steps away and like turns around like, is that it? Are we done? There's no more of that? So it's weird. He has the vibe of just like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. And then he's like, okay, I'm ready to play some more. This cat loves to play. I don't know why, but I feel really guilty whenever I use the laser with him, when we play with the laser. Because it's just like when a cat tries to catch the laser and they're like, what the heck? It's like, I feel bad. It's like, I wish I could have some tactile response there so you can enjoy actually chasing that laser. But he loves a laser, man. And it's fun to just like run it on the ground and go up a wall. And he will just go like straight up that wall trying to grab it. I initially wanted to name him Fox after Fawkes the Phoenix, F-A-W-K-E-S, Albus Dumbledore's bird. Or a magical creature, and I thought there was something poetic for me about Fawkes rising up from the ashes and losing Albus, and then having the return of having another cat come into the house and represent that. And Amanda said, "Nope, Norbert." And when I first saw him, he had kind of like he kind of looks like a Maine Coon. He's a smaller cat though, and he's I don't know if he's gonna get any bigger. He's about the size that you would expect. I'm eyeing him because he's right up there. I'll grab him and bring him back on camera in a second. But I was like, I don't know, he seems not like a feral vibe, but he's got kind of like a wildness to him, and I think Fawkes really fits that. And as I've grown to know him over the last couple years, he is for sure a Norbert. He is just a complete goofball and is a lot sillier than something as serious as a fox. And so I love this damn cat. And so I'm gonna wrap up Cuffit Jones. Hey, buddy. What are you doing? Get up. This is what I'm talking about. You're just like, no. No, you're not getting over the couch. No. And he's like, you done? Is that it? Are we done? We're not playing anymore? Are you gonna scratch me some more? Yeah, I'll scratch you some more. Come on. You goofy cat. So yes, we give dogs a lot of love here at Easy Allies. We're also big cat fans. If you have ever watched a Easy Allies Q&A, you are very familiar with the sights and sounds of Mr. Michael Damiani's cats. But he's not purring. He's way too curious about the goings-on here in the garage. So there will be no purring or meowing from Norbert today. Norbert, you feel like meowing, Norb? Huh? He's in like hunter mode, so he's not meowing. What do you say, Norby? You gonna meow? Norb? Nah, too much to see and do. As is the same with Easy Allies. Our big takeaway this week, add Fangamer to our merchandise links on the website. I will email Mr. Brent Phillips, who just had his birthday the other day, and let him know about that, who built our website. So thank you so much. Thank you for letting me... I got a bunch of cat hair in my face. Show off my cat. What a job I have that we can just sit and chat about my cat for a little bit. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. We are back above 6,000 patrons. We are back above 40K right now. But we are still going to make a commitment to show you why you should support Easy Allies. If you don't, all of you obviously do because you're watching here on Patreon. But we're going to make it more worth your while than I believe it has ever been. I'm very excited about the announcements we are about to make and more activities that we have planned for the month of October, for the month of April. I love October. October is always just the go-to. Is it October yet? For the month of April, including tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific time, twitch.tv/EasyAllies, Don's Design Lab Intramural Tournament Challenge for the game Far Cry 5, where we'll be going into the Far Cry 5 arcade editor and building some crazy stuff. I hope you will check that out and enjoy. Thank you so much for staying tuned here on Cup of Jones for 2 hours and 12 minutes.